Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke, so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Left of the box. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy, and over there is.
Hi there, it's Marc Joycey, coming to you live from Nova Scotia.
Yeah. So I couldn't find anyone from New Brunswick, but I figure what's the difference?
We're neighbors. It's
Yeah.
close enough.
Yeah, you're more neighbor to New Brunswick than I am, so and
We just got a whole
Maritimes are like
province of
their
French
own.
people in.
Yeah, Maritimes are their own thing, so it's you would have a better idea what's happening out there than I would.
Yeah, well, somewhat. I mean, there's been talk sometimes even about like combining the provinces into one, which on the one hand sounds like a good idea sometimes, but not
Mm-hmm.
always.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to give a shout out to Jeannie Bottle, who is in the SandBox. It's a very intimate crowd right now, if you're still hanging there. I see everyone is rushing to come see the results of New Brunswick.
I know, we're so popular out here.
Well, I think part of it is like Ontario, it makes sense why Ontario is the center of the country, largest population and all that sort of stuff. And then I think when it comes to like Alberta, you got the power sector out there, and British Columbia has its own, trades and stuff, and it's very connected to the United States and whatnot. But I think everyone else then forgets about like Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and all the maritime provinces because, and oh yeah, right, Quebec, but Quebec, we all know why Quebec stands out.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, oh, Jeannie Bottle says hi to you two both from the UK. Hmm.
Oh, that's late there.
Yeah, must be pretty late.
That's what, like 11 o'clock?
Mm-hmm. Well,
Wow.
hopefully, we get the results for the New Brunswick election quicker than we did for the BC elections. Uh, but just for people who are tuning in, it's not 1000% settled yet. But the official counts have been initially done. The NDP has won by 1 seat with a minority. The two Green MPs tipped the balance into their favor because, of course, they're probably going to align. They've done it before and it was fairly beneficial. And but there's two recounts going on, so nothing's getting certified until those recounts are done next week. And I haven't actually been able to find out which ridings those recounts are in. Because if they're both in conservative ridings, then it will make no difference. But if the recounts come in and let's say they're both NDP, but then the recounts show the conservative won those two ridings, and that means that the conservatives have won a majority because that's all they
Which would be
need.
scary.
Yeah, that's all they need is 2 seats. And Jeannie Bottle says, yep, it's just past 11 p.m. So you were very good on that.
I mean, and I think the Lance from the Surf said this earlier when he was on with you that, or maybe he didn't. Maybe I read somewhere else. But primarily, BC was normally run by conservatives. I mean, they identified as BC liberals, but primarily they were leaned more conservatives. And you also had, I believe it was the Social Credit Party before it was the um, BC Liberals. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but the NDP being in charge of BC is actually more of an outlier than it is the norm, despite BC sometimes being seen as the most like hippie province of
Mm-hmm.
Canada. Um, so the fact that they were in charge since 2017, um, even though that's the case, they really haven't actually been like in charge of BC proper for most of its you know time, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
for the most since the NDP has become a party out in BC, they've only held government. This would have been their third time being elected in 2017. So it's a primarily like huge conservative province. despite what like it may seem, especially when you go into the more rural areas in the interior. Um, and it'd be very, very concerning if it started to swing back towards
Hmm.
a more conservative, social conservative, because it very much the whole anti-drug, anti-homeless, anti-poverty sweep across the province is very much a social like conservative movement rather than a financially one, because like financially it'd make way more sense to actually like put a housing first strategy and have like a policy where it will allow for those who gets off the street to have like the resources they need and the ability to get clean as they see fit. Because I think you need a house first before you get clean. I don't think
Hmm.
it's you get clean and then have a house. That makes no sense. There's plenty of people who do drugs that are in houses. So if that all was all done, like financially, it would save the province so much money in the long run. But
Yeah.
they're not coming at it from a financial argument. They're coming at it from a social conservative argument,
Hmm.
and that ends up being detrimental because that's a culture war thing, and
Hmm.
nothing like facts don't change people's opinions on the culture war.
I'm.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have these issues constantly coming up.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm very disheartened with the results from BC because, like, one candidate in particular, horrible piece of shit, that man, Brent Chapman, won his seat. And, like, considering what the conservatives were riding on, what they were saying, what they were doing, how horrible they are, there's no way it should be this close. None. And so, like, what does it say to the people in the riding that Brent Chapman runs when he said, like, horrible things like, Palestinians are all inbred, when he showed a graphic of how to unalive yourself because you're crying liberal after Trump got elected, like sharing all these different racist and horrid memes and conspiracy theories. How, as a constituent, do you feel comfortable approaching him about anything if you need to? Like, it is just, it makes me so mad that he got in. And then I have a clip that we might watch or not, just global news covering it. And there are people in BC who are saying, well, yeah, I just wanted to vote against Justin Trudeau. And it's like, do they not realize this was provincial, not federal? Like, I'm so mad at people's ignorance to the political system, to the media, to the politicians for not educating people properly, because the impacts these elections have on people, like the amount of social murder the conservatives will be responsible for, like the lives change, like so many people, like I get so fed up with people saying you shouldn't vote shame. I will vote shame for a provincial election, okay? Because we're not talking about foreign policy or anything of that sort. We are talking about things that are happening here. And the amount of people who didn't bother to get off their ass and vote, even though they don't approve of the conservatives, just boggles my mind, because as far as they're concerned, they say, oh, well, nothing will change. Except to people like me who live on disability and dire poverty and stuff, the changes that the NDP in this province would have offered could be life altering, life saving for so many people. But since the average person doesn't feel affected by a lot of these policies, they're like, what's the big deal? So what? And it just drives me insane that people aren't bothering to get educated about how politics actually works in this country, and yet they have the gall to then turn around and complain about the situations that they're in. Like, it just, no, no, you shut the fuck up if you're not getting involved. And because it's not just a sprint come election season, you have to be involved the entire time, the entire year. Get involved with activism, write your MPP, let MLA, write your politicians, get involved, make your stance known. And when elections are starting to approach, you support people that you want to see in office somehow get into become the candidate in the first place. But to just wipe your hands of it every now and then after you've done the election, or say it doesn't matter, I just get so freaking fed up with those people.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I'll say, like, as a kid, I remember always being around adults, and whenever election time came, it was pretty much the typical same argument that I would hear, which was, "Well, I'm not going to vote for any of them
Hmm.
because they're all corrupt and they're all the same, and why do I care? Why should I care?" And when I was young, I always thought to myself, like, yes, I could see even as a kid that yeah, a lot of these people they'll lie on their platform and then turn around and not do what they say they're going to do, or they're corrupt or they seem like they're only in it for themselves. Um, but part of that comes from just a public that has accepted the apathy that is huge among non-voters. Uh, if you look at the voting blocks out there, the biggest voting block are non-voters. They are also the most decentralized because you can't look at that big group of non-voters and be like, well, okay, but we know why they're non-voters. We know the kind of demographic. We know the kind. Non-voters make up every gender, every race, every age group, every income bracket, and why they don't vote. There's like 100 different reasons why people don't vote. So it's incredibly decentralized, which means if you're trying to get to appeal to people who have never voted before or don't want to participate in the political system. You're not going to do it from just having a one message type campaign or having a broad set of issues or a broad set of ways to reach out to those people who aren't participating. Because a lot of time you'll see people almost have an individualistic experience as to why they're not voting. You'll have someone say they're all corrupt. You'll have someone say, "Well, I don't have time to vote because I'm too busy working 2 to 3 jobs." You'll have people say, "Why I don't even want to vote because like that's my choice. It's my choice to not want to have to vote. It's my choice to be ignorant." So when you're looking at that, and then you're looking at the fact that they are the largest set of numbers of people, you have to be as a campaign during the times where you're not actually campaigning. If you're an elected person in office, or if you're somebody who's interested in running, a year or two out, you need to start talking to non-voters just as much, if not more, than people who already vote, because people who already vote are more likely to vote again. People who voted for you in the past are more likely to vote for you again. People who don't vote for you can still be more likely to be convinced because they're already primed to want to vote. And in Canada, a lot of times we're not voting for parties to get in, we're voting parties out, which means there's lots of people who are willing to switch parties. For example, my riding right now, I'm in the riding of Sackville, Preston, Chesapeake. I believe the boundaries were just changed, but besides that, uh, my riding from the last 4 years, the last 10 years, was held by 3 different parties. It was held by the NDP. Um, it was held by the Liberals, and before the NDP, I believe it was held by the Conservatives. And that's also the case provincially. We've had an NDP MLA, we've had a Liberal MLA, and we've had a progressive Conservative uh, MLA. But that's all within the same 10-15 year period, meaning that like these districts aren't like sometimes they'll be safe. For example, our Liberal MP has been elected 3 times in a row. Before that, we had a Liberal MLA that was elected twice in a row. But sometimes they will become swing districts where literally it's a three-way race. At that point, the fact that there's so many non-voters means that like these districts are most of these districts I believe are up for grabs for any party because there's so many people who just choose not to vote, and it's the same group of people that are always voting. So candidates and campaigns and parties need in the off years to be reaching out to non-voters, to be reaching out to the ones that have never voted before or the ones that did vote but have tuned out or hate politics. Because if you give up on that such a large amount of people that aren't going to vote but have the power to, if you give up on them, it just spreads more apathy, it spreads more disinterest, it spreads more like, well, I've been getting away with not voting for 40 years and I'm still here, so why not just continue non-voting? if we don't make the case that, like, no, listen, especially now, if you don't participate, drastic, drastic consequences could happen. Um, things aren't going to get better because the same group of people are voting. And as you can see, we've had the same two parties federally. And here in Nova Scotia, we only elected an NDP government once. And in New Brunswick, the NDP don't even exist. Like, it's the Liberals, the PCs, and the Greens. The NDP as a party barely exists in New Brunswick. But there are a lot of non-voters that definitely would identify with progressive policies.
Mhm.
But every party, no matter if it's the NDP, the Greens, the Conservatives, the Liberals, they always, always, always go, well, we're going to target the people who are already voting because we can count on them to want to go vote without ever thinking to themselves, like, hey, wait a minute. Wouldn't it be worth targeting the demographic that is the largest and has the most potential to be able to make change if we actually reached out to them and wanted them to do well, or wanted them to succeed, or wanted them to get the things that they need? But you won't see parties or candidates do that because they have a limited amount of time and resources, and they only want to concentrate on the ones who are already voting, which is why in between elections, there needs to be things done where it's, okay, I'm going to go find this neighborhood where there's low propensity voters, where there's people who don't vote, there's people who haven't voted for a while, and just go talk to them and ask them what they care about. Ask them what, because I've volunteered for parties, and every single time I volunteered for parties, it's always the same. Well, we're going to go after voters who've already voted for us, or voters who have leaned towards us or indicated that they vote for us. It's like, okay, but we're skipping
Yeah.
like 5 or 6 houses in between. And maybe one of those houses said they would vote liberal or conservative, but there's 5 houses we have no information on, and we're not going to talk to them. We're just ignoring them because it's inconvenient.
Mhm.
So until that changes, until that attitude changes, like the parties and the politicians, they're not even going to try to reach out to the people who we need to start voting.
Yeah, it's one of my biggest frustrations, especially with the NDP, that they aren't doing more to really make the public aware of their policies. Because if you strip party politics out of it and you just say, here are the policies, most people actually want what the NDP offers, but they do such a poor job selling themselves, promoting themselves, educating the population, because there's no reason, like, just again, the fact that these elections are so close, when you look at what the Conservatives are going to do, what the NDP will possibly do, it should not be this close, not by a long shot. Like, the NDP should be knocking it out of the park, regardless of where you are. And I am talking like generally, because even centrists and right wingers, they want good health care. They want dental care. They want vision and eye care. They want mental health care. They want what the NDP will actually push through. And yet so many people just don't even know what the platform is. And of course, once the NDP get into power, they tend to center us out, like, oh, well, these progressive policies, I don't know about that now that we're actually in the pockets of, all the donors and things of that sort. Just drives me crazy that they then turn on their progressive policies. But I just want to say a quick hi to the SandBox. We've had a lot more people join and people commenting. So I just want to do some shout outs. Hermit Horologist says hi to all of us. And we have John Martinez, Looney Tunes 9000, Morbius Dragon, also BCat. Nice to see all of you. Glad you're tuning in for this nail biter of an election for New Brunswick. For those of you who don't know, it's actually part of Canada and not just some state you haven't heard of. Soul Life is also in the SandBox. Grand Theft Autobot. I have played that game you sent me the link to, and I don't know if I like or hate you because of it. There is a game I have been searching for years, that I used to play obsessively because it hit every autistic and OCD and ADHD note in me. And so now that I have it again, I'm like, this could be
Well, now you got
distracting.
to tell me what it is, because that's going to hit my autism ADHD maybe. So
Well,
now I got to know.
I might play it online sometime so people can get an idea of it. It's called PayPie. I don't even know if that's how you say it. I know how to spell it. PEHPEI. And so I call it PayPie. But it's probably not even how you
Okay,
say it. And it's a simple
I'll take your word for
solitaire
it.
card game, but the sound and everything, and it is the original version with the same sounds and everything, and the same frustrations I had, as in you can't undo a move, which is super frustrating, and not all of the layouts are winnable, which again is super frustrating. Because if all the layouts were winnable, or you could at least at a bare minimum undo, or at least at a bare minimum see which level you're on, because there's 18 levels, like all of those would be helpful, but at the same time I can't stop playing it. And it's a simple card game. I think in other Hoyle or, solitaire packages, it's called Three Towers. So you have a deck of cards, and 5 comes up, and then you look for the visible cards, and you have to click on a 6 or a 4, and then if you click on the 4, you then have to click on a 3 or a 5, and you keep on going like that, and you cycle around and whatnot. But it's super addictive, and I don't know if I like or hate them, because since not all the levels are actually winnable, you can be stuck on one level for 10 to 20 rounds before you can even move on. But also, since I don't think everyone in the sandbox is familiar with you, so why don't you let people know a little bit about who you are? You've been on my show a few times, but I see a lot of people in the sandbox are newer, so they probably
That's fair.
haven't met
That's
you
fair.
before.
Uh, all right then. So hi, my name is Marc Joycey. I am a political activist and studied politics in university. Also an actor. Uh, Hire me if you got any projects. But no, I'm autistic. I have ADHD, and I have been passionate about politics for as long as I can remember. I was very active on Twitter before it became X and kicked me off because Elon Musk ruined the site and I didn't want to be a part of it anymore. But I have a political science degree and acting diploma, and I have been following politics, especially American politics, since probably when I was about 14, 15 years old, and I'm now 30. So I've got a lot of experience following American and Canadian politics, and a lot of my advocacy comes from my education and also my disability background of having autism and having ADHD, and just wanting a better country for all of us Canadians and wanting a better world for everybody that's on Earth right now. So, me and Sandy met on Twitter and became pretty mutually followed each other and all that fun stuff. And well, it's my third time on the show,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
having a great time at
yeah.
this point.
Okay, so we got a fair bit of people more into the sandbox, and Grand Theft Autobot apologizes for being good at finding things online. Because I did say whoever found it I would marry, but apparently they're already married, so, you know.
Well,
But why don't we actually get into some of the other politics and update people on what's happened in BC? So I'm going to switch screens. So
hmm
I'm sorry, people, you're going to see the sausage. No, you're not going. That sounded really not right. Okay, you're going to see how I do the switches, because I hate having to remember to switch out the different screens and stuff. So I'll do this. That's not what I wanted to do. Not what I wanted to do. This, nope, this, and then do that. Okay, now I'm ready to switch it. Okay, and then I do this, and I do this, and all right, I gotta bring this up first. There we go. So you see what's on screen now, Mark?
yep.
Okay, nobody else is though. Um, Oh, no, that's not what I want. I then do that. So then when I take, so right now I have pictures of cats blocking the screen so that I can get it up so that people can see. You're not seeing what everyone else is seeing. So if I'm referring to a website that it doesn't make sense that I'm talking about, let me know and I'll switch it over so that you can see it. So now that I've set that all up, I'll do this. So now people can see the election calendar. Is that the screen? Yeah, that is the screen you're seeing. Okay. So, but first, why don't we watch a little video from Global News about the BC election? Because there is, like, I don't want to call it a big update because it's still not settled, but it's kind of settled. But let's I'll share this tab instead. And hopefully the audio works.
Well, rain pummeled.
Did you hear that, Mark? Okay,
Yep.
then it should be good.
British Columbia's south coast Saturday, it poured something else, conservative votes. But as the upstart party filled a political river, it came just short of overflowing the banks.
We are going to carry on this fight. We are going to fight every single day here. This election is not over. We have an opportunity still to form government in the province of British Columbia and bring common sense change to British Columbia.
BC election result is still hanging in the balance. Final vote counting not done, and the NDP has secured 46 seats, one short of a majority, while the Conservatives, now under the leadership of John Rustad, went from 0 seats last election to 45.
They make it sound like that's such a big jump, but the party didn't exist before last year, so of course it went to 0 to 45. It's like, oh no, they just gained 45 seats out of the blue.
Knew that every vote would matter, and that has certainly been the case.
A handful of seats are within 100 votes, and if they stay that way, will trigger an automatic recount. For now, NDP leader David Eby remains the Premier of British Columbia, but he will have to show he can work with the Greens to keep confidence of the legislature. Adding to the intrigue, Green leader Sonia Furstenau lost her own seat and taking a parting shot at the Conservatives.
It's a strange time in politics when, during an atmospheric river, people come out and vote for a party that's denying the reality of climate change.
Okay, so Richard, with such deep divisions in BC and so much still unknown, when will we know the full results of this too close to call election, and what happens next?
Yeah, like so many of us here in BC, BC elections officials were up late last night, and they have counted all the preliminary ballots, but they're still waiting to count a few additional ballots. Those are mail-in ballots that arrived after advance polls closed. We have no idea how many there are, but it's important because there are 3 races in this province that are still so close.
Just want to skip forward a bit because we'll touch on that, but they do some more chats with people, I think, in this. No, was this not? Darn it. I think there was another video I wanted to see. I'm going to have to go look for that. Let's see if I go over to this one here. Because they were talking to people on the street, which was just really ridiculous. If I go to my history... You guys aren't seeing what I'm doing. Because I'm doing it on a different screen. Problem is I watch a bazillion videos on YouTube, so...
But I mean, who doesn't?
It's pretty much my only source of entertainment and stuff. Is this it? No, that says recount, that says recount. Was it actually earlier than that? Darn it, where is it? I knew I saw it. Unless I saw it on Twitter. Let me do... No, sorry folks. There was another one which was very apt because it was basically saying, it was interviewing people on the street and they were just saying how happy they were to vote against Justin Trudeau. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to this screen here while I continue to look for that. And so this is the actual current results in right now. Is that it's now more or less official that the NDP has 46 seats, the Conservatives have 45, and the Green have 2. You need 47 to get the majority, so the NDP would have to work with the Greens. However, there are 2 seats that fall within the automatic recount, and they're going to be hand counted, and so those results won't be in until next week. But this is kind of like after the initial first counts, this is where the seats line, but until the recounts, it won't be made official. So I hate to do this to you, Mark, but would you mind chatting while I look desperately for this video because it's me off?
Sure. So at least one thing that we can take away right now from looking at these vote totals, though, is that between the New Democratic Party and the Green Party, there are, at least by the looks of it, over 100,000 votes more than the Conservative Party. So you are looking at, you got 44.6 plus 8.2, so that's going to end up being 52.8%, which isn't a big majority, but it does show that out of the voters, primarily are choosing more progressive um, policy wise, because the Green Party, while um, somewhat different than the NDP. They are way more progressive and way more likely to implement progressive policy than the Conservative Party. So, looking at that, you can at least know that the province in itself, voter wise and vote wise, leans more progressive than it does conservative. However, that's not the system we live in. We don't live in where a plurality or sorry, a majority vote determines who wins. We go by seats, and the seats are done first past the post. So you could have less votes and still end up becoming the government in charge. And funny enough, the last two elections, the federal conservatives actually got more votes than the federal liberals. It's just that all those votes are concentrated in a smaller amount of seats. This is why we desperately, desperately, desperately need to stop having first past the post as our election system. I did see that interview just a few weeks ago about Trudeau coming out, and whoopsie daisy, turns out I should have done electoral reform.
Yeah.
My bad. Um, and well, yeah, it is his bad. It's pretty bad. And the thing is, even at this point, as somebody who does support proportional representation, even at this point, I would take what's the other one called? Ranked choice voting. Even I would take ranked choice voting right now over um, the first past the post system. Because the argument that like, oh well, liberals will win all the time because they're everyone's second choice. I don't actually think so. Especially when we're seeing a lot of the blue to orange and the orange recently also the orange to blue switch, where a lot of more rural, more uh, white, more men are switching from the NDP to the Conservatives. The idea that like if you were to vote NDP, it's automatically assumed that the Liberal would be your second choice, or if you vote Conservative, the Liberal will be your second choice. The evidence doesn't really point to that. In fact, there are cases where the Liberals are the third choice, and the NDP and the Conservatives are the first and second, and vice versa. So the idea that ranked choice voting would only help the Liberals is not fully true. However, it is the default that yes, the Liberals would be the second choice, but it's not the second choice for actually a sizable amount of people, more than I expected or knew, which is why at this point, again, I do actually support ranked choice voting as much as I do support proportional representation. Either system is going to be better than the stupid first past the post that we have right now. And like we need electoral reform sooner rather than later.
Sorry, I am still looking for it. It is driving
All
me
right, so I'm
crazy.
still vamping.
Yeah,
So,
no, I am so
besides
sorry
electoral,
about this, people. Because I'm like,
besides electoral reform,
I have the cat picture up right now because I'm looking on these screens because it's really frustrating because I saw this video, but it's like, did I see it in Twitter or YouTube or on the actual news article?
but it's not a new thing for Canadians to have absolutely no idea how the political system works or whether or not a province um, or the feds are in charge of a certain
Jeff.
policy. Our constitution has it so that the provincial and the federal governments are supposed to be equals and have separation of powers. If you were to ask Canadians on the street to name the separation of powers between provincials and the feds, 9 out of 10 of them probably would have no idea the full list. And some assume that the provinces are in charge when it's actually the feds and vice versa. Even I, as a poli sci grad, couldn't even tell you off the top of my head fully which ones are provincial and which ones are federal. I'd have to rebrush up on that. However, I can say for certain that a lot of files that um, are provincially mandated are assumed to be federal by a lot of ignorant people, and therefore, when they elect a whole bunch of conservative premiers and things end up being cut or things end up not working out the way they do, instead of getting mad at the province, they turn around and get mad at the feds. And Justin Trudeau has been in charge for the last 9 years. I'm not a big fan of the guy, but he does get blamed for a lot of things that are not in his control. The biggest one I will say right now is healthcare. So you will see a lot of people complain about healthcare and then for turn around and say that the liberals are driving up so much spending and inflation that we can't afford to spend money on healthcare. That's not true. What's preventing provinces from spending money on healthcare is conservative premiers deciding that they don't want to spend the money on healthcare. Um, and part of that blame does come from the feds because back in the 80s and 90s, during a time of austerity, Canada did somewhat transfer its responsibility of funding away from itself transferring to the provinces and more so said to the provinces, okay, we're going to cut funding and you need to pick up the slack. And so provinces struggled to do that. Of course, provinces elected conservatives, and conservatives had no intention of spending the money properly anyway. But provinces did have a hard time back in the 80s and 90s. All right, I can see this. All
I
right, I want to see
found
what this
it.
video.
Finally,
I want to see how ridiculous this
I am
is.
so sorry, everyone, that it took so long. But I'm not necessarily keen on ranked choice myself. For well, anyway, this is the video that I had saw.
Conservative. Why conservative? Well, first of all, you just need a change, and then definitely get the liberals out.
Conservative.
Why conservative?
I'm done with Justin Trudeau.
Wednesday is the final day for advanced voting. The election will be held on October 19th. For Castanet News, I'm Madison Reeve in Kelowna.
So these were just a couple people. So this woman saying, yeah, I'm voting against the Liberals. The Liberal Party was not running in BC. And then this woman saying, voting against Justin Trudeau. A lot of people don't understand that a provincial party and a federal party are two separate things. And again, this is a failure of education in our country, of the politicians, of like so much frustration, because the fact that the general public doesn't know this or gets confused with this. Because like even here in Ontario, the NDP provincially versus the NDP federally, there's a lot of crossover with volunteers, resources and stuff, especially because the capital of the country is in this province. So they use a lot of the same spaces and whatnot. But they are different parties with different apparatuses, different funding, and they can even have different policies. And so to have all these people in BC thinking that they're voting against Justin Trudeau because they're voting for the Conservatives, it boggles the mind.
And it's honestly, it's because we don't have proper civic education.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll always tell this story. When I was in high school, by the time we got to around grade 12, we were allowed to pick like some of our courses that we could have in order to graduate, as long as we had, the math and the English. But two of the courses I ended up picking were political science 12 and economics 12. And both of those classes were canceled because not enough students enrolled. So think about that. The political science class, the only political science class offered for the entire high school from grade 9 to 12 for mine, was canceled because not enough students signed up. It's not like it was an advertised option very well. And it's not like we ever really engaged with civic political discussion in our social studies classes or whatnot. But the fact that I lost the ability to get because I took economics 11, I lost my ability to learn economics 12, and I lost my ability to get political science 12, the only political science course offered, because not enough students signed up. Not enough students signed up because political science was considered an elective, and because it's not discussed very often, it's not a popular elective.
Mm-hmm.
but that also means that like I was deprived, and only because I was passionate and I went and looked up stuff on my own. But I looked at the course syllabus of that course, and it was going to teach about like the separation of powers, the political parties and what they stand for, how government works, like what's the Senate, what's the House, like what's the speakership,
Mhm.
what are the and so the fact that all of that was taken away just because not enough students signed up.
Yeah.
um, I don't know what the final tally was, but I believe it was only short, like maybe 7 or 8 kids. Like if the class was supposed to have like maybe what 22 or 23, and ended up being 15 or 16.
Mhm.
Um, but they just cut it.
Yeah.
And again, it's not offered as a
Mhm.
mandatory lesson of civics. It's just
Mhm.
it's an elective. And
Yeah.
so if it's an elective, no one's going to want to learn about it if we're not taught it.
I had to take an online course when I was an adult before I decided if I wanted to get involved with politics. And it was like, the federal government of Canada type thing to learn about how the federal government actually works and stuff like that. And I was just kind of blown away. It's like a lot of this stuff I didn't know already, and we should, because one of my frustrations, we know more about how the American political system works than we do about how the Canadian political system works. And part of my frustration is it'd be so easy to change things up here if more people just knew how our system works and got involved. It'd actually be very, very easy to change the tide and things. But here we have this article from Press Progress just talking about like meet the extreme far right BC conservative candidates who are now legislators following BC's wild election. And some of these people are just horrible, horrible people. Brent Chapman is one of them, and I have a few videos on him. So just absolutely racist, bigoted stuff. He's a Trump supporter, sharing the graphic on how to unalive yourself for the liberals who were crying after Trump was elected. Like, absolute horrid piece of shit. And the thought that so many people just, again, they're so unplugged. They just voted for him because they vote conservative without having any standards, without looking at who he is, at his platform, like the amount of things that he had to apologize for, and the fact that John Rustad was just standing behind him saying, well, the people will make the choice come election day. And it's like only a small percentage of people will make that choice because, again, turnout is so low. And for most people who are low information voters, they may be seeing one or two things of him, but they haven't seen all the horrid stuff about him that might actually change their minds. Because, like, my mom used to be a conservative voter until Doug Ford ran for premier because she's like, I can't he is too much of a monster, that she couldn't support that. And this guy is a monster. Absolutely. Chapman, a character actor best known for minor. So let's see. I didn't know he was into that. Okay. He was repeatedly hammered for past comments accusing Muslims of inbreeding, comparing public health policies to the Nazi Holocaust, and making statements questioning whether mass shootings in Sandy Hook and Quebec City really happened. Chapman, who also faced scrutiny for posting anti-refugee content and content instructing critics of Donald Trump on how to kill themselves, also appeared on a podcast where the host claimed residential schools are a massive fraud and also referenced conspiracy theories revolving around the United Nations. He is now elected into office in British Columbia. This person, a residential school denier, Sandy Hook, the Quebec mosque shooting were hoaxes. How can you look at somebody like that and think, I feel comfortable going to him with my problems? Like, if you're an immigrant and you're having issues, how do you go to him? If you're having issues with housing, how do you go to him and feel like he actually has your best interests in mind when you see all this sort of stuff? Or will take mental health issues seriously if he's actually sharing graphics to people on how to unalive themselves. Like, this is just, again, I am vote shaming the hell out of everyone in BC who didn't bother to go out and vote. Yes, I get there was an atmospheric storm that day, an atmospheric river or whatever they call it, and there was flooding in a lot of areas, but there is advanced polling. that people could have done. The polling stations are open for the day. Legally, you're allowed time off work to go vote. It's not difficult to vote. And most people who I saw voted that day said they only had to wait at most a couple minutes. Like, there are polling stations close to people's residence for a reason, so that you can go there, the entire round trip to get there to vote and to get back home, you're looking at 20 minutes. And so many people chose not to. And because of that, this monster is in office.
Yeah. And again, it comes back to like people just having this sense of apathy and not realizing that their apathy affects other people. Like they think, and I understand why they think this, but they think, oh, if I don't vote, it's not affecting anything. I'm just one person. But like the lack of a vote is a vote, because it ends up being a vote for the worst of what is being offered. Because if you're not voting for anything that is to counter that, then your non-vote, which is, part of the reason why I've always somewhat been like a huge supporter of like, you have to vote Democrat even if you hate them, because like it's harm reduction, and like harm reduction is huge. That's why like BC for the longest time, I lived in BC for a little bit. Why harm reduction of like offering safe supply, or making sure that there's always clean needles available, or that if people are ODing, that they're not going to get And it was a good idea when it passed, where if you call 911, you're not going to be worried about being arrested because you happen to have drugs on you and you're calling because someone has an overdose. Like those are all harm reduction steps that are provable outcomes to make lives not as miserable for people. But if you don't get involved in the political process, um, your non-vote is going towards a harmful candidate, because there are people out there who are going to vote for a harmful candidate because either they support the harm that he's going to cause, or you know they've been voting conservative all their life, or their dad voted conservative, so that means I have to vote conservative. um it You need like, I don't always like vote shaming, but like you said, for a provincial election like this, vote shaming, yeah, you, so much is at stake.
And it's, for me, again, it's vote shaming the people who don't bother to get off their ass. Because, like, for some people who vote conservative, I actually feel sorry for them because they've been suckered into it. They've been convinced that this these conspiracy theories are true, and they're victims of a lot of this misinformation and things of that sort. Also, but on the flip side, there are also just a lot of racist and horrible people that vote conservative because they do like those policies. But I look at it here in Ontario again with Doug Ford for the last while, and so many more people have lost their homes, are unhoused. People who could be voting in the next election are no longer alive to vote because of the policies he put through. Like the NDP and the Greens were both going to, and then the Liberals were finally shamed into it, drastically increase the rates for people relying on disability. And then Doug Ford comes in and he just does it this very tiny, meager amount after not doing it for a couple years. And it doesn't even really keep up with inflation. There are people that are unhoused right now because of that would have been housed had any other government gotten into place. And it's so frustrating because it's the people who don't feel the effect without caring at all about the people that live with less, the people with disabilities, the people who live with poverty, who these policies have a direct impact on their lives. And it's so frustrating that people care so little about the rest of the people in this country that they're willing to just say, screw it, I'm not going out. But
Yeah, I mean, it's just, there's a lack of empathy. There's a lack of like being able to connect yourself and be like, hey, wait a minute. I could be in that situation if I got fired, or if I became disabled. Like many, like, what is it? Any Canadian can become disabled at any point. Like just because mine and yours disabilities was something we were born with, doesn't mean that like somebody who wasn't born with a disability won't ever get one. Um, And like you have to vote in a way that's like, I need to think of the most vulnerable person in our society
Mhm.
and vote based on that.
Mm.
But you have people who uh, either don't vote or they vote on vibes. Like they just get a vibe. It's like,
Yeah.
I got a feeling and I feel this way and I'm going to vote this way because I feel this way.
Mhm.
And voting is like a tangible thing.
Mhm.
And to take a tangible thing and then try to say like, well, I'm actually going to lump it into something that's not tangible, which is vibes, which
Mhm.
is like how I'm, you know, feeling in the given moment. um, that's a separation that for some reason are connected, and
Mhm.
they shouldn't be, because voting is a tool. Voting
Mhm.
is something that you use to affect an outcome.
Mhm.
Vibes vibes can change.
Yeah.
Vibes can aren't permanent. Voting and the tangible outcomes can be
Mhm.
permanent, especially when those outcomes can cause illness, death, poverty, lack of supports. Those are permanent things that could happen.
Mhm.
Say what you want about Hillary Clinton. Do you think she would have let COVID run rucksaw over the United States? Part of the reason why we have healthcare problems is because Donald Trump came out and said, "Not COVID's not a big deal." Like, as much as I would hate if he actually did this, could you imagine if Donald Trump came out and he had like 50 guys behind him in military uniform, all wearing masks, and being like, "We are taking this very seriously. We are gonna get this virus down in like 2 weeks. We're the strongest nation on earth. We got the strongest
Mhm.
medicine and the strongest people. And look at our military. We love our military. They're gonna be taking care of us." Like if he came out and acted like that even
Mhm.
for one press conference,
Yeah.
everyone would have been like, "Oh yeah, I'm getting vaccinated. I'm getting a
Mhm.
mask. I'm going to be like Donald Trump. I'm going to." But that's not what he did.
Yeah.
He came out and he downplayed it. He said it wasn't a big deal. He said, it was fake news, that the vaccine, there could be issues. Why would you need a mask? Like, that's the thing, is that like vibes is why we're in a healthcare crisis,
Mhm.
because people's vibes were to
Yeah.
follow Donald Trump, and Donald Trump's vibes at the time was to downplay it.
Mhm.
Again, if he had come out and he did the opposite, where he, did the whole, like
Mhm.
we're gonna give masks to everybody because we're big and strong and we're better than everybody else. Like, well then, yeah, everybody would have put on masks and
Yeah.
everybody would have gotten vaccinated.
If more
Instead, we have a healthcare
Yeah.
crisis.
If more people were actually to just look at the policy and vote based on that, conservatives, for a large part of it, won't get in because they don't actually have policies. Like a lot of them don't even release their platforms until after the election type thing. Doug Ford did that here. It's so frustrating. So I quickly
Well,
just
even
want
Blaine Higgs
yeah,
in New Brunswick
I quickly just want to go over
barely had a.
sorry, I just quickly want to go over a couple more of the BC cons that got in. Then there's a couple articles that I want to hit on about candidates and issues in New Brunswick because their polls are closing now. If I'm doing my time math correctly. So here we have another elected BC Conservative MLA, Jordan Keeley, has repeatedly posted about chemtrails on his social media accounts. Yay! So we have chemtrails, and one post from his farm's Facebook page warned of supposed government plan to eat bugs, control the weather, and spray things in the air. Why not? Then we have Christina, whatever her name is, has been prolific in sharing conspiratorial content on Facebook, called Reject NWO New World Orders BS. Included references to conspiracies about 15-minute cities, World Economic Forums, and the United Nations. Tara Armstrong, claimed medical doctor who was encouraging the public to get vaccinated, was bought and paid for by Big Pharma, total fraud. This is just a sampling. People can go check out the Press Progress article to see which of these conspiratorial, racist, horrid people got voted in. And it is so disturbing that nobody paid enough attention to actually just stand back and look at who these people were before they decided, or some people did and just liked what they saw. But we have here, I just want to bring up this article. So this is a candidate. This was the original article that I showed about her. This is a candidate in New Brunswick right now, 18. And if we scooch down here, the way that she described Blaine Higgs was kind of, I wouldn't want to say dog whistly because everyone could hear what she was saying. Where is it? Ah, here we go. So this is something that she said. So Faitine, who will run in the riding of Hampton, Fundy, St. Martin, currently held by Tory, so most likely will go to her if people aren't paying attention, because Conservative riding already, said what caught her attention about Higgs was that he stuck his neck out for parents on the issue of gender identity. When I saw the heat that he was taking, I thought, you know what? This is a leader that has a pedigree and a stature, and I'll just use that word again, pedigree. That is so rare in our nation. That is complete white nationalist bullshit right there. And here, the Green candidate was just saying that she should have never been allowed to run in the first place. Like, the fact that these people pass vetting is disgusting. That there's a party willing to accept these horrid people to actually represent their party. But also at play, we have here New Brunswick not ruling out notwithstanding clause in bill to force people into drug care. So that's Blaine Higgs saying that. New Brunswick Premier Blaine Higgs says he has not ruled out using the notwithstanding clause to adopt legislation that would allow authorities to force certain people into drug treatment. Higgs told reporters on Tuesday the Compassionate Intervention Act is not ready to be tabled, but wouldn't exclude using the clause in the Constitution that shields bills from court challenges over charter right violations. Again, they know they're violating people's rights when he's already saying, well, we'll just use the notwithstanding clause. He knows that this goes against people's rights. It says, well, it's early days, he said in response to a question about the clause. I would say, let's get it introduced and we'll have lots of discussion on that in detail. The Compassionate Intervention Act, originally planned to be tabled this week, is now scheduled, blah, blah, blah. And there was also Policy 713 that they pushed through. And Policy 713 is the one where it forces teachers to misgender trans children who don't feel safe coming out at home or reporting them to their parents. Like, not even informally. We're not talking about like on documentation or anything, just informally referring to a student by their preferred pronouns, by a different name. Nope, you can't do that without the parent consent. And this is what's at line. Also, New Brunswick no longer, I believe it's New Brunswick that no longer even has any place where people can get reproductive care and abortion if you need it. They've defunded them so that they're completely non-existent. Just absolutely, like, conservatives are wrecking this country. They're destroying lives. They're marginalizing groups. They're targeting the most vulnerable people and using those people's lives as fodder to rile up their hateful bases. It's disgusting that this is even an issue, that we have politicians willing and ready and eager to violate the rights of Canadians, and there's no pushback. Like, where's the pushback from other organizations, other politicians? And then if it does get to the courts and the courts say, yeah, you're violating the rights, they just pull the notwithstanding clause to override that. The notwithstanding clause shouldn't exist in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It needs to be removed because its sole point is to take away people's rights.
Yeah. It's a horrible clause. And it's one of those clauses where it's like, I'm assuming, like, at some point on paper, it was meant to be like, okay, if something drastic needs to happen, um, this thing sunsets in 5 years. Therefore, uh, we can, um, implement it just like worst case scenario. But now it's being used as like the first option. And like as soon as any pushback happens, it's like, well, we're going to use it. Well, then it defeats the purpose of it being like what it was originally planned, which was meant to be like a last case, like, the world is ending. We need to do something drastic that may violate a charter right. Now it's like, oh, you don't agree with my policy and you got a court to say it's bad. Well, all right, now it's standing clause. Now it's policy for the next 5 years. Uh,
Mhm.
I think there needs, and the biggest problem is that we already have such a huge constitutional issue already with Quebec not having signed our constitution. That the last two like big constitutional things were about trying to get Quebec to sign it. That if we were to try to open up the constitution now to get rid of the notwithstanding clause, unfortunately, it would open a huge can of worms for other provinces and especially Quebec to then go like, well, now that it's open, let's change things around and let's fix the equalization payments or let's and it would turn into such a huge mess. So unfortunately we're stuck with it right now.
Mhm.
And the only thing we can do is try to tell people and say like this clause, which again was for like the worst case scenario, is now being used to stifle Canadians' charter rights. And we need to have like a mass amount of people standing up for that because you'd think violating our charter rights would be enough to get people upset, to know that like there are governments out there who think, hey, if we want to pass policy, we will pass policy regardless of whether or not your rights are respected. That's a huge issue. And it's being used way too liberally, ironically. Um, Used way too liberally by conservative premiers to get push their horrible agendas through. We really need people to like start stepping up. Okay, so this is the polls
So this is
closed
the
so
polls
far.
already. So we just have leading so far. Nobody has been called yet. And they only need 25 seats for a majority because New Brunswick is small.
But look how many votes came in. Like we're at a
Mhm.
very small amount right now.
Yeah.
Where we got 10,000 votes counted. You got 5,000 for the Liberals, 6,000 for the Conservatives. I don't know. I mean, a lot of people are mad at Blaine Higgs. Even people in his own party. He had a
Mhm.
whole bunch of cabinet resignations. He had people stepping down and talking about how horrible he is. It's really just going to be like how many seats and whether or not the Greens and Liberals vote split each other.
So we have here live coverage from CBC News as well.
For the Progressive Conservative Party, leading over Bruce Northrup by 309 votes right now, with 5 out of 19 polls reporting. And we have Progressive Conservative Party, Don Monahan is leading in Arcadia, Butternut Valley, Maple Hills. There's no incumbent in this party.
That riding sounds delicious.
I was just going to say, like, I haven't heard of a more tasty riding.
It sounds like a very delicious riding.
Moment in her riding of Tantramar and over John Higham and Bruce Finney. I'm going to head back right now to the CBC's David Cochran and his panel. David.
Claire, you weren't kidding about the tabulators and the results coming in fast.
We'll go back here. So right now, right now we're not looking good for the micro vision of it because it's the Conservatives leading by a fair bit.
However, if they fail to get a majority, I really don't think the Greens are going to support them. So they have to get a majority to form government.
Yeah, because
they'll get the opportunity to try first, but if there's a non-confidence vote immediately, then
so they
would
technically form government, but the instant there was a non-confidence vote, it would throw them back into another election. Because, like, in this instance,
Not necessarily an election though, because
Mhm.
the second party with the most seats will get a chance to
Mhm.
form government.
if
So if the
if
Greens
there's
are
enough,
willing to support them,
yeah,
yeah.
if the Greens are willing to support them. But I'm just thinking, I don't know how likely the Greens would be willing to necessarily, unless polling suggests that if they were to go into in their election, that the Conservatives would definitely win.
Well, I saw a global news analysis of the New Brunswick election talking about how the leader of the Green Party already has a list of demands that they want
Mm.
from um, the Liberals if they were to hold the balance of
Mhm.
power. So I do actually think the Greens want to work with the Liberals. I think they know that they're not going to form government ever, like
Mhm.
anywhere close. I mean, in this election, and that the only way they're going to get any policies is to work with the Liberals. So right now, it's literally just like if the PCs fail to get, oh, look at that. If the PCs fail to get a majority, then
Mhm.
they won't get a chance to govern
Yeah.
because they'll immediately call a non-confidence vote. And the Greens have concessions they want from the Liberals.
Yeah.
They don't have anything from the Conservatives. I don't think the Greens want to work with Conservatives at all.
No.
So it really depends on the seat count. And I mean, we're looking at the update right now. The Liberals are now leading in 27 seats versus 20.
It's just,
So I mean, we
yeah.
don't really know where it's going to go right now.
Yeah, we don't know. Like, again, these are just such a tiny, tiny amount of votes have been passed. But like here, I would love to see the Greens prop up the Liberal Party, because I would love to see the policies that the Greens would try to push through for this, because they tend to be better on a lot of stuff.
And we've seen an example of how a smaller party can get a lot done.
Mhm.
The NDP federally did a lot with the Liberals. Like, there's a lot you can say about Jagmeet Singh and the party that like they've kind of not hit their mark on. But if we're talking about using their power for such a small amount of seats, like the Bloc has more seats than the NDP.
Mhm.
But if for using their seats to actually push meaningful stuff, like a lot of people complain about the lack of universality of these programs. That's from the Liberals. That's not from the NDP. The
Mhm.
NDP had a majority. All those programs like dental care, pharmacare, um, you know, subsidies. Those would all be universal programs. It's
Mhm.
not the NDP that were like, we don't want to make dental care universal. That was the Liberals.
Yeah.
That was the Liberals that said, yeah, we're not passing this unless it's being tested.
Mhm.
So the ND like we've seen results of like what happens when a smaller party uses their power the right way.
Well, that's how
So
we
I
got.
totally concede.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how we got our universal health care as we know it today, was when the NDP forced the Liberals to push it through way back when. Because they, again, it was in their position with the minority government, and that's how we got the health care that we used to have about 30 years ago. Was pretty good. But
And that's why like I really like try to highlight to people who say like, oh, Jagmeet Singh and the NDP are exactly like the Liberals.
Mhm.
It's like if you really believe that, that means you think that an NDP majority would be exactly the same as a Liberal majority. And if you really believe that, then why are you voting the Liberals over NDP? But
Oh, it did update. There's like
yeah.
this results will update, and like I'm doing the countdown. I can see it, and now
I
I'm
see
going to be
that
upset with it.
every 10 seconds or something.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No change.
But it says 132 out of 733 polls reported.
Yeah.
So we're looking at, like 1/6 of the results so far.
Yeah.
So
Well, why don't we quickly check the SandBox, and then we'll go back to the video from CBC and see if they're saying anything worth chatting about.
I don't have the chat in front of me, so if anybody's asking me anything, I can't see it. So
Well, I can. And you're doing a wonderful, wonderful job, and I'm sure everyone's loving you. Because you're making my job here a lot easier when I come in here and it's like, where's that goddamn video I've seen once upon a time?
I mean, chat, you didn't see this, or SandBox, you didn't see this, but like I was like spending 20 minutes getting my lighting and my sound, and I was actually very tiny on camera for a while. that I would have just been this little like dude, just like
Mhm.
in the background. You wouldn't even be able to see me. It took forever to set up.
Let's see. Glenna Miles says, I'm appalled some of the conservative candidates who were elected. I think we're all in agreement there. Crotchety, I voted early. I always go to advanced polling. It's so quick and easy. And that's something like if you have any doubt whatsoever that you're going to make it out on the actual election day, there's plenty of advanced polling that people can go to. And the wait times, I've done it before, are non-existent. You just walk in and vote pretty much.
Now, I don't know if this is something that's going to happen with, Elections Canada or Elections New Brunswick or Nova Scotia, Ontario, wherever. But I just did my municipal election. So Halifax just had their municipal election.
Mhm.
I voted on my phone.
Oh.
It was online. They sent a letter in the mail. It had your PIN for your specific name and address. I went on to Simply Voting for Halifax. I put in my PIN. It matched my name and address and all that stuff. And then I voted for my district councillor and my mayor. And it took me literally 5 minutes on my phone, sitting at my kitchen table. Didn't even
That's
have to leave the house.
that's the way to go in the future.
If that could honestly be the way to go in the future, then even anybody
Yeah.
deciding not to vote at that point
No
is
excuse. Unless,
no
you know,
excuse.
the only people that get the excuse are the people in dire poverty that can't afford a phone. But they usually have more concerns than, who's being elected. It's in survival. Jeannie Bottle has signed off for the night because it was midnight where
UK.
they were in the UK.
In the UK, yeah.
First one in, first one out. But good night, and thank you for tuning in, Jeannie, if you rewatch this later on. Let's see.
Chip chip cheerio. Watch this in the morning and see how we did.
So Live, they're saying that Elon's daily $1 million lottery stunt might have already swung the election for Trump, and apparently there's debate if it's legal or not. It's not legal.
I want to know about swinging the election. First of all, there's a couple things that I think people kind of forget. One, all kinds of new voters, like new registered voters, are swinging to the Democrats. You have a lot of people who've never voted before, people who have sat out for a long time. They're signing. There's a lot of them signing up, and they're primarily going to the Democrats. Also, you have a whole bunch of people that died from COVID, and a majority of them were Republicans because it was the Republicans that refused to get vax, refused to do protections. There's a lot of Republican numbers that have just passed away.
Well, they're saying
there's always going to be more Democratic voters because young people tend to lean Democrat. So you're already looking at a change that way.
Yeah, the newest studies, I think the Majority Report was featuring it today from Barack Obama giving a speech or something. As many as 400,000 Americans died from COVID that didn't have to if they had just followed the same procedures that we did up here, because ours was 40% per capita less than theirs when it came to death from COVID. But just Grand Theft Autobot saying, I've said it before and I'll say it again, progressive conservative name is so dumb and contradictory. I don't disagree with that.
And I'll say this I learned in political science. A lot of the progressive conservative, because before we had our Conservative Party of Canada, we actually had two conservative parties. We had the Progressive Conservatives, and then we had the Reform Party or the Alliance Party, which and the Progressive Conservatives very much, and they're not so much anymore, but they were very much of the from the Red Tory background, basically being they were Tories, they were conservatives, but they were called Red Tories because they leaned kind of close to where the Liberals were, in that they had conservative policy prescriptions and they identified as conservatives, but the way they had it was a little bit more about taking care of their community. They wanted to save money so they could take care of their local communities and spend money on their local communities. So Red Toryism was for a long time the progressive conservative model, meaning that you had these conservatives who saw themselves as progressive, but they still were conservative. that doesn't really exist anymore. When the CPC merged, basically all the PCs were kicked out or left, and so the Conservative Party Canada is now very much like a right-wing party, not a red Tory party. And then all the parties left to the right of Quebec, as in like New Brunswick, PEI, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, we all still have progressive conservative parties, in Ontario as well. That's changing. Those are no longer red Tory progressive conservative parties. There's now just regular conservative, Trump supporting. I mean, my premier now, Tim Houston, who's a PC, he originally said he wasn't going to vote conservative in the federal election, and that was about 3.5 years ago. Where like that red Toryism of like, no, I'm not supporting the federal conservatives, even though they're progressive conservative, like that was in swing. Late now, if I asked Tim Houston now, like, hey, would you vote federal conservative? He'd probably say yes, and that is the defeat of red Tory, that progressive conservative element. That's very much a diminishing force now in Canada, and you won't see those people in conservative parties much anymore. They typically either move to the Liberal Party, or we have that new Future Party. Did you see that Canada Future Party when they debuted themselves, of how they're supposed to be the new center party that is appealing to people who are tired of the Liberals and Conservatives? Yeah, well, appealing to the middle. That's never been a.
Could I just get some
done
people typing ones in the chat if audio is okay? Because somebody was mentioning that they needed more audio, but I can't tell if that's a joke or not. So people just put ones in the chat if you're hearing everything okay. Because I my sense of humor is restricted to things I understand as funny. Let's see. We'll go back to seeing what CBC does.
In Moncton, for example, we are looking at several Liberal gains so far in terms of
okay, we're getting ones. Audio is fine.
Results that we have to date, but
well, this is hopeful.
Big changes also in the St. John region. Fairly substantial leads in St. John, Portland, Simons. That's the big one that Liberals are hoping to get. Dr. John Dornan running in that riding that Trevor Holder held for all those years. And Liberals also performing very well up in Fredericton. We see all kinds of red in the Fredericton area, which we didn't.
Reminder to Americans who are watching, red is good here.
Particularly in Fredericton and St. John, but
red is liberal, blue is conservative, the reverse of what it is in the States, which is wreaks havoc on my dyslexia.
These leads are still holding up. So far, so good.
One thing that might really hurt the PCs and Blair Higgs is just how much he's had like disdain for French. Like French Canadians are very much not likely to vote for the Progressive Conservatives, considering that like Blair Higgs has run saying that he before, like way back in the day, being like New Brunswick should be only English and that it's a detriment that they're bilingual. And he doesn't even speak French. He's a premier of a bilingual province and he does not speak French.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to hurt him.
Like, I know Fredericton is pretty bilingual from what I've heard.
The more north you go in New Brunswick, the more French it is. And they tend to vote Liberal. But that's all. But like, if you're coming out and being antagonistic to like half of your population based on language, like that's not going to help you.
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot of votes being voted, but even so, like the ones that are motivated to vote, like nothing would motivate me more because I am French. Nothing would motivate me more than someone saying like, yeah, your language sucks and I'm not bothering to learn it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, sacré bleu.
Okay. Well, I have the audio muted on the YouTube video right now, so that we can talk over it without hearing crosstalk too much. But I will click back on.
This is such an interesting race tonight. And you know what? There are 14 seats right now with less than a 100 vote margin. Let's look at one of them.
Every vote counts when there's low turnout.
In Quispamsis, Blaine Higgs riding, Aaron
Oh,
Kennedy right
please,
now
please,
is in the lead by
please.
26 votes. Just 26
That's
votes
the
leading
current
over
premier of New
Higgs
Brunswick.
with
Oh my god.
471 votes. Aaron Kennedy
Gosh,
with
that would be nice.
497 votes.
I want to see him
Let's take a
out.
look at how the leader of the Green Party is doing. Okay, right now, Daniel Chippen, the candidate
It'd be
for the
funny if
PC
none of the
party,
leaders won their own
is
ridings.
in the lead in Fredericton Lincoln over David
Like,
Kuhn, Green Party leader.
Look how
by
close these are between
11,
three parties, not just
votes.
two.
Yeah.
And Susan Holt right now is in
480,
the lead. All of these
469,
leaders in very
391.
tight races right now. Susan Holt is in the lead right now.
So Susan
in
Holt
her
is the
riding
leader of the
Fredericton
Liberal
South
Party
Silverwood
in
by
New
86
Brunswick,
points.
for people who don't know.
Goodness. What do you make of it, Jacques?
Well, you know, Quispamsis was not a riding. The Liberals like to fantasize about ridings every election, and this was one they've been fantasizing about. It's hard to imagine that result holding, but that would be one of the big stories of the night if that happened. But yeah, all of these leaders are in tight races, and
He's already gone back
it's
up
good
ahead.
for them to not take anything for granted in their local
No, Bill
constituencies.
Horgan. That's somebody different. That was the education minister. Never mind.
That
That
CBC
did the
Decision
policy
Desk is
713.
making its first elected candidate projection. Chuck Chasson has.
Oh yeah,
the
that one
Decision
looks
Desk
pretty
is
solid.
There we
projecting
go. Well,
elected
that's a
in Grand Falls,
huge
Vallée
lead.
des Rivières, Saint-Quentin, and that is
It's a
over
re-election,
PC,
so-
a
Yeah.
handy lead. Actually, that he had over
Yeah, so for
PC.
people, if you can see the little
So
stars,
that is
that's
Chuck
the
Chasson,
incumbents.
our first projected elected candidate this evening. We're going to head over to the CBC's Khalil Akhtar.
So then this should be updated. Not yet. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, I guess it can't up. Oh, no. Saying 2 elected for the Liberal Party so far.
All right, Sandy, it's your turn to entertain. I'll be right back.
Okay. Well, it's easy for me to entertain because all I do is I go to the SandBox. and because I love chatting with you guys. But yeah, so again, for people who getting the Conservatives out of New Brunswick would just be a huge sign. It'd be a huge sign as to where the country is going. Like, it would just be a boost, a benefit, just to make people feel a little bit better, especially after what happened in BC. Because, let's see, because in BC, you know, that was just so close that it was devastating. It'd be nice to see this seat actually flip and for the Liberals to be in charge. Of course, I'd love the NDP or the Green to be in charge, but that's not likely to happen. But especially again, next week, Saskatchewan is having their provincial election. If they also flip, if they flip there, it would be to the NDP because they're the second highest party. Then that would be a good sign, at least when it comes to federal. If we had a bunch of these people like voting the Conservatives out of power, because both in New Brunswick and Saskatchewan, they currently have Conservative governments that have just been wreaking havoc on the provinces. Same here in Ontario. Like what Doug Ford has been doing has just been wreaking havoc. And he plans on literally buying votes next year. He's going to send out $200 checks to everyone just because to help with the cost of living. He's going to do that. My suspicion is he's going to call for an election. I suspect that there's going to be an early federal election. And I suspect that Doug Ford will call for an election shortly after that so that everyone has election fatigue, which would then mean fewer people than normal would even go out for the provincial election at that point. But with him literally buying votes again, because he did this last election with the license plate renewal, just deciding to get rid of that, which meant billions less in the coffers of the province. I think a lot of people are feeling the whole fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice. No, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And I think a lot of people will be feeling that come the next election if Doug Ford is just trying to buy votes again. Let's see. Crotchety is saying I can hear, but it's still low.
Now, if you're not busy anytime soon, we're gonna have a Nova Scotia election pretty soon, so
It
you can come
was,
on for that one if you want.
yeah, it was, if I go to the calendar here, that's next summer, I believe. Yeah, July
Yes,
15th,
but
2025.
that's when it's scheduled.
Mm.
However, Tim Houston has walked back on his promise to have fixed election dates. Nova Scotia is one of the only provinces that doesn't actually have fixed election dates. That's only the date because that's 4 years after we had our last election.
So you're suspecting it might be earlier?
We're suspecting it might be called this week.
Oh, interesting. And yes, I'll have to do another one. So right now we're sitting at 2 and 2. Just checking the SandBox. Let's see. People chatting amongst themselves in the SandBox, which is good. Seth Evans saying learning other languages is good and should be taught from earliest age.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Although I will say, part of the reason why it took me so long to learn French was because at a young age, I wasn't actually able to learn two at the same time. And that's probably just because of my disability, but I wasn't able to learn English and French at the same time. I had to choose one. And so I chose English. And now I'm trying to learn French again, but I'm not bilingual yet, but I will eventually.
Je sais pas comment parler en français, mais mon audience est ignorante de mon ignorance. Alors dis-en oui que je parle français.
Ah, très bon. Hey, ta accent c'est très bon as well.
Oh, merci.
See, I'm a Acadian French, so we mix English and French together. Actually, and it's relevant in New Brunswick. They're also primarily Acadian, but they're next to the Quebec border. But they speak Chiac, which is like a mixture of French and English. And the idea that like Blair Higgs would even be like, I can't be bothered to learn French when the French that is to be learned in New Brunswick has a lot of English words in it. Like it's the easiest French you could get to learn. Because we mix all the time.
Did I see it on Twitter today?
Whoa, look at that change.
Oh, nice. There was something, since we're talking about it. Let's see if I can find it.
Can you imagine a liberal majority?
Well, I can.
We were just thinking like we were hoping for a PC minority. But I think Blair Higgs is really on. He was the least popular premier in the whole country. You know, my sister lives in New Brunswick and she's in the public service for mental health and addictions, and every single worker in mental health and addictions cannot stand the PC government just because of how poorly they run that file.
I messed that up. There we go. Let me just do this. I'm showing people on screen this. There we go. For those who are interested. It looks like Google Translate just recently added Canadian French as one of its new languages.
So that's that's the one left. Okay, and let me see. So I've been using Duolingo, and I can immediately tell that that Canadian French is different.
Yeah, Canadian French has always been different than France French, and I actually like the Quebec accent so much better.
What, than the France?
Yeah, I like harsher accents.
Well, I mean, funny enough, like Saint-Pierre-et-Miquelon is right off the coast of Newfoundland. So you have a French that's been influenced by, Newfoundland. So like they don't sound nothing like the mainland.
Yeah.
On Saint-Pierre, they sound nothing like France. They sound way more like Acadian.
Yeah, and say what you will about Yves Blanchette, but his voice and his accent, love.
Well, there's a reason why the Bloc
He
has
has a
third
radio
place.
voice. Oh, love.
He knows just how good he sounds.
Yes.
Because if you've ever watched Question Period
Mm-hmm.
and you see you
He's the leader of the Bloc Québécois for people who don't know.
Yeah, third place party in the federal. So it goes Liberals, Conservatives, the Bloc, then the NDP. No, every time he stands up in Question Period, he's always like, "I'm telling a story with my question," and like I really expecting Trudeau to answer like how this will be good for Quebec because how I speak is so important. Like it's so he knows it sounds good.
That man has a stage presence about him, and his voice is just love it. I love it. It's like, so smooth.
Even I'll admit, like there's a magnetism to the way he communicates that is like leagues better than like the last two leaders they had put together. Do you remember them? Like Guy, what was it? Guy Diet? No, what was it? See, I don't even remember because like nobody, they weren't relevant.
Let's get back to global news.
Passamaquoddy and Mi'kmaq brothers and sisters.
And hello, Sheldon, to the SandBox. Nice to see you.
Partner with them, and I know that's something that has been a struggle, and so that's really important. And just want to say huge thanks to all the candidates for just putting themselves out
I think
there
the Liberals
and
might
all the
actually
hard work
take
they've been
this.
doing
This
in
might actually be a good night for some good news.
Oh,
somebody. I'm at a wood table. Knock on wood.
Yeah, somebody in the SandBox also pointing out, and I think I saw an article about it as well. Auntie K's Tarot says Google also added Inuktitut for a language.
Good.
Well, right now, if
what are you watching?
This projection holds up the 26th, then the Liberals will win a majority.
Tonight is the future of their healthcare system. And again, many New Brunswickers have expressed frustration over the last number of years in terms of access to care,
like knock on wood,
surgical wait times,
this is a big
ER
win.
wait times,
because
and, you know, I'm sure
Atlantic
every
Canada,
candidate
especially.
has heard of this.
Sorry, I shouldn't say Atlantic Canada. The Maritimes has had conservative governments for a long time. Like PEI's government has been conservative since I believe it was 2018 or 19 they had their election. Nova Scotia has been conservative since 2021, but I would argue that the Liberal Party before our Conservative Party was so conservative that we could say that we've had a conservative government since 2013. And New Brunswick has had a conservative government since I believe is a while. Like to see that like turn around with a Liberal Party that, you know, is not the NDP, but is certainly better than the Nova Scotia Liberal Party that like I used to know really well, is way more progressive, especially for New Brunswick, because we've always looked at New Brunswick as like being more conservative than Nova Scotia in some ways. The conservative tradition out here in the Maritimes is very different than the rest of the country. Unfortunately, social media is erasing that like distinctness because social media is the great unifier, and the loudest conservative voice is going to beat out all other types of conservative voices. And because those types of people are all attracted to power and people wanting, you know, like to be on top, they're gonna recognize that. So like the maritime conservative tradition is not really here much anymore. So hopefully that means that progressivism can like take over, because like a lot of our conservatism had some roots of progressivism in it. And if we can take that progressivism and add to us, then I mean like the left.
Yeah, somebody,
especially New Brunswick.
Yeah, somebody from the SandBox, Daniel Van Wyden, is saying, Sandy, do you know the better Labour Party is in New Brunswick, Green or Libs? I don't know for sure, but the reality is the Libs are not good on Labour, generally speaking. Like, I want to be clear about this. I am not a fan of the Liberal Party, provincially or federally. It doesn't really matter where. It's just, in this case, they're so much better than the Conservative Party, because the Conservative Party actively harms people, like they put through policy 713.
Like, you had that up there. You know that other underneath the green, that's the NDP. Like they're at 2.9% in this province. They're non-existent.
So the reality, the reality is the Greens, they're not going to be winning. The NDP are not going to be winning in New Brunswick. I would love to see the Liberal Party have to be propped up by the Green Party, because then there might be more push for more progressive policies. But just even having a clear majority from the Liberal Party to get rid of the Conservatives, at this point, that's a win, you know. But just because the Liberals, if they get in, it doesn't mean our job is done. It means that we still have to push for the policies that we want to make them more labor friendly, because, like I said, federally especially, they're pretty anti-labor. You know, if there's a strike or anything like that, Justin Trudeau has threatened to use the notwithstanding clause to get them back in. He's used legislation to force people back to work when they're on strike. So I'm not a fan of the Liberal Party. I just want to see the Conservatives lose.
Yep. You know, it's like when you're watching a hockey game, right? If your team swept out of the Stanley Cup playoffs, you root for the team that's going against the team you really don't like. And if your politics is about helping people and about making lives better for the most people, especially the ones that are most vulnerable, you want to see the team that does the opposite of that lose.
That's
so
a very
you'll put up with the good Liberals if you have to.
That's a very Canadian way of putting it. Make it about hockey.
Like, come on. Like, I'm a Leafs fan, but I'd rather see the Habs win than Boston. Like, that's just me. Like, I'm a Leafs fan, but I will root for Montreal every time when I see them play Boston.
Let's see. Grand Theft Autobot is saying the Green Party is founded on 6 principles, including ecological wisdom, nonviolence, social justice, sustainability, participatory democracy, and respect for diversity. So they might,
if that's the platform they want to commit to, like if that's actually what they're saying, sure. If they actually govern that way, that's another thing. Like we see that all the time with parties. They have something, that doesn't mean they do it.
Yeah, the problem with the Green Party is that you can have very diverse opinions within the party, because look at it federally, like you have Elizabeth May and the issues around her and some of the other leaderships. But then you have Mike Morris, who is the Green MP that actually lives near me, who is a fantastic representative.
Do you remember what I said last time about him?
Not off the top of my head.
Remember I said I don't think the NDP should run a candidate in his riding?
Oh, yeah.
I said I like that's how good he is. Like I think like the NDP should not just not run a candidate.
Yeah, Mike Morris is just absolutely amazing. I have an interview with him posted on my YouTube channel talking about disability rights, because he's one of the few people advocating for people with disabilities on a federal level. And like if he was the representative of the Greens and you know the Greens all followed his cues, then I would 100% be saying, okay, everyone just vote Green. Like screw the NDP, vote Green.
Well, before the whole leadership kerfuffle, what it actually looked like Demetrius Lascaris. I'm this is just going by memory. I don't actually know his name off the top of my head. But when he was running, and it looked like there was a chance that he might actually be like the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, at that point, I was literally like, if the Greens end up being like a more left version of the NDP, like, why wouldn't I support that? Because I support
Oh, they're projecting a Liberal majority already.
Whoa!
CBC
News here.
She campaigned on change that she said was badly needed in New Brunswick, making big promises around health care and affordable living. And she stressed a team-based approach throughout her campaign, and her team
also,
has
think
had
about
an incredible
how
showing
amazing this
tonight
is
at the polls.
for
This
the
is a
trans
historic
and
night
the
for New Brunswick,
LGBTQ
Jacques, the first woman premier
community.
of New Brunswick.
It sure is.
The first woman premier in New Brunswick. That's great.
Yeah. There's a good chance that abortions will be available in New Brunswick again.
Look at that.
Right.
But I'll just
people say that like
Susan Holt had a
American
plan.
conservatism
She
bleeds into our country and affects our politics, and it does. but that's also true about left-wing progressive leading into ours. Like how much Canadian politics and the even looking at the NDP, how much of that was based off 2016 when Bernie ran? Like how much were we following his first run?
Yeah.
There was nothing the equivalent. Like Jack Layton had just died. Mulcair was a horrible NDP leader, in my opinion. Took the party to the right of Justin Trudeau in the election in 2015. That's what got people like me wanting to vote for Trudeau. He ran as more progressive than the NDP. He ran the party more progressive, and Mulcair was happy to try to play neoliberal, middle of the road.
He's part of, like, he's moved to be like a liberal something or other now. Like he's completely abandoned any NDP principles.
And so,
not that he had them.
So we had nothing in terms of like Trudeau. Yes, Trudeau. But in 2016, Trudeau had only been PM for a year and was already like coming out and being cringy he was starting to show just how corrupt he could be. It was still the honeymoon period, but people were already kind of taking notice that there was something there. But besides that, we had nothing. Jack Layton had passed away, and Mulcair took the NDP down a horrible direction. Jagmeet Singh was not even a household name yet. Who did we have to look at? We had the 2015 and 2016 run of Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders ran, and so many people took notice up here. So many people, including myself. Now, look how many years later we are. We're almost 10 years later from when he first ran. And look how much the left has power compared to then. Because I was around when Obama was president. When Obama was president, you couldn't say a single thing or complain a single way about how conservative Obama was. Because in Canada, people would say, we have Stephen Harper, and Obama is way better than Bush. So you couldn't say anything. So the idea that American, the abortion being taken away in America, the attack on trans and LGBTQ plus people, if that's not going to bleed up here, I mean, it's social media is the great equalizer in that way. Of course, like American progressivism is going to bleed its way up here. And that's why I think we're seeing 31-16. Like it's not even a close race here.
No, it's great because first female premier of New Brunswick. One would hope this means that, access to reproductive care will become an issue again. Like actually be able to fund the clinics, but just, Blaine Higgs, anti-trans, was ready to lock up people for having addictions against their will, using the notwithstanding clause to take away people's rights. Like he was just a horrible, horrible person. So it's just having such a strong showing too, again, just shows how many people are fed up with suffering under a conservative government there. And
I mean, yeah. And I was just going to say, if this holds and if BC holds, this is the third left government that has been elected this year. Because we also had the leader of
Manitoba. Yeah, Wab Kinew.
Yes, Wab Kinew. So, like, that is a clear message that in Canada, despite people being angry at Trudeau, they don't want more conservatism. They want something better. And I don't think that's a coincidence that we might now have 3 changes of government that have leaned left.
Well, the BC, they wouldn't have changed. They would have just maintained.
No, but they would have beaten out a party that had a combined, right? Because like you go from having a vote split to not a vote split. That's a repudiation of them. Because now you have them all in one party. And if they get defeated as all one party, then no, you can't say, oh, it's just a vote split. No, they actually lost.
Yeah. So this is, and it's nice that we already know, because unlike with BC, well, BC has technically been called. So the first round of votes have been counted. BC, the NDP have won a minority position. The Greens will have to prop them up, which, you know, I think is good. I just don't like how close it is, because if one person crosses the floor, or, you know, there has to be a by-election, it can actually swing into the Conservatives' favor. So I don't like it being that close. So I like that this one, it's very decisive, that the Liberals, they could lose a couple seats and still be in a majority position. But it's nice
again,
that we already know.
To New Brunswick, Blair Higgs was like the least popular premier in the whole country.
Yeah.
Like he did have like an uphill battle coming into this. I personally did not expect that it would be this much of a blowout. This is a much better prediction. I predicted like maybe
and so
27.
That's going to be a loss.
28.
I'm sure there will be a way to move forward and advance policies for New Brunswickers.
There was some doubt, Nicole, just to come back to you for a second, about whether or not this would be a change election. And in a lot of the conversations we had throughout the campaign, the four of us here and people I talked
Still
to,
want to find out if Blaine Higgs won his seat.
They felt there was a pretty broad range of outcomes, but thought it would be really, really close. You look at where it is right now. This looks and feels like a change election, does it not?
So Susan Holt won her seat?
Does. And I think I was one of the ones who said that this is definitely a change election, and we were talking about advanced polls and how advanced polls can,
Jill Green's
at
been
least
defeated.
In the old days, when before the pandemic, advanced polling, you know, the activity in it was often an indication, right, of change. People want change. They want to get out there and they want to vote and they want to do it early. And
I want to see what the tasty writing has.
Advanced poll numbers too. So most definitely, and that's what.
Yeah, is it going to be bittersweet or is it going to be delectable?
It's time for a change.
Yeah.
When my 91-year-old mother says it's time for a change.
Unfortunately, Bill Horgan is going to win his seat. He's he was responsible for policy 713.
You know what's going on. All right, thank you there, Claire. That's the reaction there. Jeff Carr saying Blaine Higgs owes an apology to a lot of people. We'll see what the Premier has to say when he speaks later tonight.
Thanks so much, David. That's David.
I want to see that speech.
Insider panel there tonight. All right, and we do have some more breaking news.
It's so hard to say these days. Like here, it seems pretty decisive.
More like
so.
projected. All right, we have Susan Holt elected as projection in Fredericton South Silverwood over Nicole Carlin and Simon Ouellette. That is the leader of the Liberal Party. Our
But see, look at these votes.
Susan Holt winning her
Think about
seat
how many people live in that
Fredericton South
riding,
Silverwood. And
these
look
ridings
at
that are eligible
David
to vote.
Kuhn,
Yeah.
projected
And
elected
look how
in
small
his
this
seat
is.
of Fredericton
Like, think
Lincoln.
about how
David
much
Kuhn
elections, local
winning
elections
his seat
matter.
tonight, the Green Party
And how
leader.
important it is to get
And
people
let's
who are
check
not
out
traditional
our final
voters to
leader.
come out and vote.
So Blaine Higgs is still trailing in the riding of Quispam.
Close.
Aaron Kennedy still has
And
a
above a
lead
recount.
over Blaine Higgs. PC leader Blaine Higgs.
It's above a
Aaron
recount.
Kennedy with the Liberal Party is ahead by 163 points at this time. Jacques, Bob.
Well,
Talk about
you
change.
know, New Brunswickers decided they wanted to get rid of this government, and you know, we've all been wondering whether Susan Holt's riding would be close.
Yes.
Three ways, frankly, with a good PC
When the
candidate,
NDP were defeated
good
here
Green
in
candidate,
2013,
Green history, PC history,
the leader
voters
was
there just
eliminated.
emphatically said, let's do it this way, and the result is clear. And then even in Blaine Higgs's writing, flip it around. At the moment, a critical number of voters there have decided they don't want him around either, as premier or as MLA.
Or as a candidate.
That is close. That may not hold, but it's an amazing result, and it speaks to, you know, when
I'm just looking for the tasty writing at this point.
It's real, and I was joking today. It's only close until it isn't, and
yeah, that would make sense.
People have really made up their minds today.
Most definitely. Bob, also David Kuhn in his writing.
It's a really good sign that it's such a decisive one, because that's a lot of people repudiating the conservative government and what they've been doing.
Well, if the conservative part, if the conservative leader
easily,
goes,
the thing that really stands out to me is what's happened in St. John. Blaine Higgs' backyard. That is really ground zero of what's happened tonight. The Liberal vote is up almost 30% in the city. They're winning 5 out of 6 seats after winning none last time, only 1 the time before that. And the last I saw, Glenn Savoy was hanging on to the only PC.
That's where my sister lives.
You could probably take
they don't
an
like him
hour
there.
drive from St. John around and not run into a PC riding the way things
yeah,
are
I'm
going.
interested
He
to
had
see
a
what the
30
voter
vote lead in
turnout
one
will be
poll
for
today.
this
Could be a
afterwards.
sweep in
For
St.
these
John by
elections,
end
the
of night.
provincial
But,
elections.
the people who know Blaine Higgs best, the community around St. John, those cabinet ministers who had enough of him, Trevor Holt, Dorothy Shepherd, boy, it really seemed to resonate with voters in the St. John area and even in Blaine Higgs' own riding. Quite a devastating rebuke from the people who know him best.
Let's check in
Oh,
with
up to
Khalil
31
Akhtar
seats
with
now.
our community stakeholder panel in the kitchen there. They're having some snacks and they have lots to talk about.
We've been sitting here. We've been watching election results.
I want to see speeches later on.
I'll probably have to check out soon just because my social battery is almost.
Yeah. Well, at least we got the results fairly quickly with this one. Yeah. Unlike with BC. Which still hasn't.
Do you want to do like 5 more minutes?
Sure.
9 o'clock? 'Cause it'll be 9
good.
o'clock here.
Fatine did not win. Is not winning. Sorry. She was a horrible person. She's not winning
and
hers.
there's Blair Higgs right there.
Yeah. Yeah, we can do another 5 minutes if you like, and then I'll probably stay on a bit longer because it's earlier in the evening for me.
Because, we're an hour ahead.
Yeah. So it's good that Fatine didn't win because she was just absolutely crazy. You know, I'm okay with people having, different religious beliefs if you want to speak in tongue and all that sort of stuff. Whatever, people would look at the things that I believe in spiritually and probably think I'm a little off. But when she starts convincing people that she's giving them a supernatural blood transfusion, like this is now actively harming people. When you're scamming them out of money, when you're convincing them you're healing them through the power of, prayer and stuff like that, that's where I start getting a lot more like that is not okay. And that is the type of Christian preacher she is.
Yeah, this is huge.
Mm-hmm.
This is a huge win.
Looks like they're at the green
Through
base.
The crowd there. We can see him. We can see Simon Ouellet there as well.
Oh, and then the green.
And David Kuhn.
The Green Party should be happy with this because this is
to his group of supporters.
They may not be able to influence government
very shortly.
But if you care about climate change, this is a victory.
And
to have a party that at least acknowledges it.
Yeah.
And it's not just going to help Irving,
Fredericton Lincoln, but he's
even
lost
more
one
oil.
member of his caucus, a valuable member of his caucus, as Amanda was saying. We were wondering whether he'd make it, and he, I think in that riding, people, this thing I was talking about, this emphatic desire for change.
Happening
and to
in the
vote decisively.
SandBox?
Oh, let me check. So why don't I
Before I head
switch
out?
over to just us?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk for the next couple minutes before I
Okay.
head out.
Like I said, I'll stay on a bit longer, but let's just check the SandBox quickly. Glenna Mills crossing my fingers very hard here in BC for the NDP to hold BC. From the looks of it, they have. They've officially called it, but it's not, they're not, oh, what's the word when you make it official? They're not making it.
When you make it official.
There's a term for it where it's like, okay, we're going to make it official. All the initial counts have come through. They have 46 seats to the Conservatives, 45, but there's 2 ridings that need a recount. But as of the first initial count, the NDP has won, with the Greens having to prop them up. Oh, I think the Green is giving a speech, but anyway. Let's see. Her meteorologist, she claims to have revived a dead person as well. Speaking of Fatine.
Oh boy.
Yeah. People are trying to help me out with the word that it is, but nobody has gotten it yet. There was
When
a
you make something
specific
official,
word for it.
Is it are you talking about in context of an election or just like the way it normally is?
Like,
Because I'm thinking like declared.
uh,
That's what I was thinking.
like in the books type thing.
Registered?
It'd be something along the lines of registered, but it's not registered.
Ratified?
Something like that. Anyway, it's most likely, you know, unless something very odd happens in those recounts, that's the way it is for now. Let's see. Okay. Well, I think that's good. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at Joycey Marc. I don't really use X, but I am on X technically. Also under Joycey_Marc. And I'm on Casting Workbook if you do any casting. So yeah, I'm hoping to eventually make it as an actor. But if I don't, I mean, I'd love to be able to be. You know what my ultimate dream was? It was to be the next Rick Mercer. Because we need another Rick Mercer.
Yes, that would be great.
It would be really great to have because I loved watching the Mercer Report. Yeah, so those are my handles. Sandy was very nice coming on and doing the coverage with you. I had a lot of fun.
Okay.
This was great.
Okay, to everyone, I will be right back. And I am back. Looks like the Green is giving a little speech here, so why don't we listen to that?
You have my commitment that we will act on what we heard in the Legislative Assembly. We're at a fork in the road in our history in New Brunswick. We chose action over talk. We choose the hope that springs from action rather than the despair that spreads from inaction. But to get to the future we want, we must act together, and we can do so with respect and with mutual understanding. And that is certainly what we will bring to this Legislative Assembly. There's a stubborn strength that runs through all who live in our beautiful province. We just need to funnel that strength in common cause.
John Martinez, I think the word is certified, like something like that when it comes to what's happening in BC. John Martinez also saying, waiting for Doug Ford to lose so you won't have to see him when he visits Ontario soon. I don't think there's going to be an election that soon, but
we will have to push forward to secure the necessary change.
yeah, I don't think there's going to be an election this year in Ontario, but who knows. But considering he wants to do the $200 checks next year, he's going to wait till after that to have the next election. But yeah, I want him gone. Danielle Smith needs to go. She is destroying her province. People's lives are literally being lost because of the social murder these conservative premiers are doing. Let's tune back into this. I tuned back in just to hear cheering. He probably said something brilliant, I'm sure. They're waiting Blaine Higgs to arrive. I want to see his speech. Oh, there, we can switch back here. So elected so far have been 22 Liberals, and those are the official. And they're leading 9. And so they must be leading those. Oh, now it's up to 24 and 7, and they only need 25 seats to have the majority. And so those 7 that they're leading in must be pretty, distinct for the news to already be calling it for the Liberals. That is Susan Holt will become the first woman premier of New Brunswick. And so that's 637 out of 733 polls reporting. Like, there's literally nothing that the Conservatives could do at this point to swing it in their favor. So this is really good news.
Enjoy the evening, bonne soirée, because tomorrow we've got work to do.
John Martinez, trying to buy votes like Bush did with tax cuts, checks, and Trump's with the stimulus checks. Yes, Doug Ford bought votes last time too by, as I was mentioning earlier, he got rid of the license plate renewals fees that people had to pay. So not only did that, yeah, sure, some people, not everyone, got some money back for it, which, of course, more money in the pocket's nice, but that took away billions of dollars in the coffers of the province. So far less money going into social services and healthcare and things of that sort. And so now he's going to spend $3.2 billion sending out a check to everyone in Ontario, which I think there's still qualifications. We're talking about adults here. For $200 just to help with the cost of living, instead of investing that $3.2 billion into making our lives better through healthcare and access and, all of the sort of stuff, education and whatnot. It's so frustrating. But I think a lot of people are feeling it this time, whereas the first time it's fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And I think a lot of people are not going to fall for it again when he decides to just blatantly buy the votes. Grand Theft Autobot, yeah, we need Ford gone, gutting healthcare, but spending millions making sure beer gets to stores. You can't have healthcare? Have a beer to forget your troubles that we caused. Yep, pretty much. Grand Theft Autobot also saying, send me a check. I'm still voting him out. Yeah, me too. Let's see. I don't know why Soul Life says fastest poop ever, but it is there in the sandbox. I hope you didn't poop in the sandbox. John Martinez, it appears Ontarians have woke up and won't buy Ford's bullshit. Give me legit hope, Sandy. I want to, but it's complicated because, his disapproval rating is extreme here in this province. But it doesn't matter how many people disapprove of him. It matters how many people actually come out and vote against him. Because we only had 40% turnout in the last provincial election, something ridiculous like that. Maybe not even that high. And all the people who support him, they come out and vote. It's the people who, aren't happy with him that decide to sit at home and do nothing, which is just, again, so frustrating. Good night, Vicky Clee. But, like, sure, yeah, I'd like the extra $200, but is that going to make any real big impact on my life? No. I get a couple more grocery trips. I can buy myself maybe something nice, but that's about it. It doesn't change my month-to-month existence. I still want to find out what that tasty riding was. And I so want to see Blaine Higgs voted out of his seat, and from the looks of it, he was going to lose it, which is just mwah, fantastic. Crotchety Dougie Ford campaigned on increasing alcoholism, made it far more accessible to people, and then shut down 10 of the 17 safe consumption sites for drugs. But bars, they're allowed to be open across the street from a school. Let's see what they are saying.
Not a minority government where they have the leverage on the direction of government. But you heard the crowd chanting, nah, 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 hey, hey, goodbye about Blaine Higgs. Explain that dynamic inside the Green Party.
Well, I think that in itself is from a Green perspective, a victory. Obviously, the Greens had a lot of criticism about the direction Higgs was taking the province, and a lot of different ideas about where we should be going instead. So
let's see if I can find the tasty writing on this one. We have these fun little interactive maps that we can look at. Not that one. There we go. Oh, darn it, they went conservative. Arcadia Butternut Valley Maple Hills. That just sounds delicious. Because butternut squash is really yummy. Add some maple into it. Yeah, Butternut Valley Maple Hills. Sounds delicious. Unfortunately, it went conservative. Grr.
That you thought he should apologize for the way he ran his campaign. What do you think we're going to hear from Blaine Higgs when we see him?
I think he's going to be shocked. I think that he is going to be told.
I just want to hear what he has to say. I don't care what they think he's going to say, because just good riddance. Good riddance. He was a horrible person, you know, wanting to put through policies that would actively harm people. Which is, again, that's all the conservative governments. They just actively want to harm people. Yes, Angela W., it is looking like Blaine Higgs is going to lose his riding, which is just perfect. But, you know, I'd love to see more gains with the Greens and the NDP across the country, both federally and provincially. But I'd also like to see them stick to their principles, because the NDP in BC, they're the ones that are like, okay, so we'll start the forced treatment of people with severe addictions, mental health issues, and brain injuries. And who gets to make that determining factor as to which one of them is, you know, who needs to be forced that treatment? I think is this it?
Because it's an obvious question whether he will step down as leader tonight after this defeat and being behind in his
And
riding.
that's Blaine Higgs
said
there.
that if he didn't win this election, his entire time in office was a waste. So he could give us a very different kind of speech than what we're used to in concession speeches.
Interesting.
We have the final poll reporting in his riding. He still
It'd be funny if he didn't have a backup speech for losing Like
all
not
that
only
goes in,
losing,
he will have
but
lost
losing his
his
riding.
seat.
Okay. Let's listen in.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for being here tonight. It's certainly not the night we'd hoped for. Nevertheless, it is what it is.
It's the night
The
we
people of New
hoped
Brunswick
for.
have spoken, and I have called and congratulated Susan Holt and her team on their victory. Susan, you've earned the trust of the people, and I wish her here every success as she takes on the challenges that lie ahead. I'm proud of the campaign we ran, one that was focused on making New Brunswick a better place for all of us. We set out to continue the work we started over the past few years, improving healthcare, building our economy, and ensuring a brighter future for the next generation. We have
He didn't do
record
any
numbers
of
people
those.
coming to our province now. We have a foundation to build on economically, a province that was severely in debt and spiraling in the wrong direction. We've certainly
Due
seen
to him.
investment that has grown in our province, to private sectors coming here and setting up.
That's
Record
not a
number of
good
kids
thing.
in schools. We were closing schools in 18, opening schools, now building many more. So the province is on a trajectory that will move it forward. And I'm really hoping that Susan Holt and her Liberal colleagues will continue that path, because New Brunswick deserves a bright future.
Yeah. And they have the chance of it now with him out of power.
As we talk about, the outcome that it wasn't what we'd hoped for, I am deeply grateful to the tireless efforts of many, many people on the team. Many volunteers that have worked throughout the entire campaign cycle, throughout this entire election, with the hope that we would continue the progress that we've made to date. To our candidates, our volunteers, and every supporter who believed in our message that it was important to keep building New Brunswick. Our candidates around the province, I know it's a tough loss. The quality of candidates that we had running this time were second to none. I've seen such amazing people step forward.
Horrible people. Horrible people.
To our candidates that have won, I congratulate you, and I encourage you to keep the torch burning and to rebuild our party and to keep New Brunswick strong by being an opposition that is stronger than ever by holding the whole government to account. So tonight's result, obviously we'll start the process of leadership transition within PCNB. I will have discussion in the days ahead with my caucus, the party leadership, and my family about the next steps and how to proceed. After those discussions are complete, I will make a formal announcement. Some of the issues are already predetermined, so it won't be a newsflash. But I guess I want to say that through all of this, I have to resort back to a couple that have been with me from the very beginning. That's Paul and Therese Destu. And, amazing support, have guided us
Please
through this
clap to make
14
me
years
feel
now.
better. Please
And
clap.
I guess, all things come to an end.
John Martinez. He does look
But our
like
friendship
Mitch
will end, and
McTurtle.
I hope my friendship won't end with all
There
the
is a resemblance to him. That's for sure.
Where we still reside. I also want to thank my loving wife. It's been a very stressful month for her. and she's
Crouchety saying he looks like the evil twin of Mr. Dress Up.
Quite what I'll do with you in retirement. So now she'll be thinking that, probably staying awake tonight. Now, what am I really going to do with this guy? So many things left undone, on our path to fix the province. So there's lots of work to do for any new government, and I'm only
To
only
fix?
hoping
Did
that
he
that
just
will
say to
continue.
fix the
I
province?
also want to thank my daughters.
The
who are here
province that
tonight,
he helped
Laura and
wreck.
Rachel. My two other daughters aren't here with me tonight. They're both traveling abroad, but it's wonderful to have family support, which I've had through the entire time in office, and actually through my entire life. Four most wonderful daughters and a wife that 46 years and counting. So it's pretty impressive. So as we look forward, again, I just say thanks to each and every one of you. May God ask his blessing certainly on this province. We have a wonderful province. We have a lot to be thankful for. We have, we've seen people.
Angela W. Okay, I'm going out for dinner. If you haven't watched Steve Booth's Saskatchewan election special, you should. I plan on watching it.
I'm honored to have been in office while that has been going on, and I wouldn't have done it, been able to do it without the tremendous support from so many volunteers, so many people dedicated.
And
to
John
the cause.
Martinez, you know what?
And we
Fuck Duck
stand
Ford,
for what
I'm
we believe
visiting
in.
with or without
You know,
him.
we
He
fall
can
for
kiss
what we
my
believe in,
indigenous ass.
but,
Toronto,
we
here
don't
I
lose our
come.
conviction in the process. Thank you very much.
Toronto is an awesome city to visit. Grand Theft Autobot, he's the evil Mr. Dress Up past the gender you were assigned at birth or else. I don't think he was prepared to lose his seat.
And there is PC leader Blaine Higgs.
I don't think he was prepared to lose his seat, which is just awesome that he did. Oh, I can take this out of at least one ear hole now. It hurts my ear holes to have these mics, the speak headphones in. I need those ones that wrap around the ear. Hermit horologist, I miss when Canadian politicians didn't talk about God. Yes, we used to do a much better job of keeping religion out of, you know, out of the general speak when it came to politics. But I'm interested to see what Susan Holtz will have to say, what her speech is. I'm sure she's buzzing right now, just absolutely over the moon, because this is some really good results. I want to see how badly he was beat, though. I don't know which riding he was in. Oh, let's go. Lane. Okay, so it's not like he was like mopped up completely. But still a decent number of people. Well, if you combine also the Green Party, the New Democrats as well, then it's a fair bit, but still, it was just good to see him out. I'm interested to see what they're waiting for Holt to arrive. I'm interested to see what she's going to say. It's nice that we actually get these speeches and stuff, because again, with the election in BC, the results were too close to say for the first few days, actually. And it's only today that they're like, okay, yeah. Providing nothing weird happens with the recount. The NDP is in power there, propped up by the Greens, which is good. Let's see, I'm just going to check the SandBox. Scroll up and see if I missed some good comments while we're waiting to see if Susan Holtz come in. Other than that, I might call it a night a bit early. I'm a bit socialized out. I was seeing people every day for the past few days, like Friday. I was hanging out with you all here after my discussion with Lance from the Serves. You can go check out that live stream to see me actually talk to him for the first time. And then I was out at a farm fair on Saturday. I got a blanket. It's super soft. It's rainbow with unicorns and it glows in the dark. I am silly like that. I love unicorns. I still have a unicorn from when I was like 5 years old. A little collectible, a little unicorn, My Little Pony unicorn from when I was 5 years old. I've always had a thing for unicorns. So glow in the dark and rainbow and soft. It hit all the important points. And then I was at a friend's place yesterday for their child's 1-year birthday. I'm not a fan of kids. I wanted to show my support anyway. So I'm kind of all peopled out and socialized out, so I wouldn't mind just relaxing for the rest of the evening. Oh, it's still fairly early too. It's like only 8:30. I don't know if I'll be doing another live stream before Monday. I'm looking to find somebody to do the Saskatchewan live coverage with me for everyone, which should be fun. But I don't know if I'll be doing another live stream between then. Again, I'm kind of exhausted. And I have some things that I'm trying to get ready for the Halloween special that I plan on doing. I have some videos that I need to kind of pre-record for it, hopefully. So I want to make sure I get that done. But there are some things in the news that are just really I want to cover, but I have other engagements this week and stuff, so we'll see. We'll see. Checking the SandBox. Let's see. Read some of those comments. Soul Life, have you ever plucked a nose hair? You can use like little scissors and trim if needed. Oh, sorry about that. But yeah, it's nice to have this all done. I was watching the live coverage of the BC election through Lance's stream because he was live streaming that with a few other people. And it was such a nail biter for so long, and then it's so unsatisfying if it doesn't get called that night. You know? Because you just want to know the election down the States for the president. Oh, it's going to be horrible because chances are you're not going to know the night of the election who actually won, because there's going to be a lot of recounts and close calls. It's going to be a nightmare. Although I desperately wanted to go down to the Majority Report live show for that, but I don't think I want to be on that side of the border come election night in the United States. I feel safer up here for that. Let's see. Oh, it looks like they're getting ready for Susan's speech. They're doing, it looks like, some photo ops on the stage. Let's see. Okay, might as well skip back down to the bottom of the SandBox. Well, it's nice to see you out, Auntie K. Tarrant. Don't know if I've seen you in the SandBox before, so welcome, and I hope you have a good night. And they also said to John Martinez, my Algonquin Lakota kid is in Toronto protesting with the Palestinians. And yes, Toronto is fun and you'll enjoy it, John. There's lots to do there. Yeah, I had a global news video about, again, it is just so horrific what's happening over in the Middle East, like in Gaza and stuff. And there was a video of people on the edges of northern Gaza, just a crowd of people waiting, like looking into the distance, waiting to go in and settle it. Jewish settlers just eagerly waiting for it, and the reporter talked to a couple of them, and what they just said was so vile, and they seemed so oblivious to the horridness that's coming out of their mouths. Like, just so entitled and so much think of the people of Gaza as not human. It is disgusting. And I think even the media is starting to catch on to it. I find global news is a bit better on it than some of the other mainstream media here in Canada. But even just to show those people and how cold they were. Just a couple people in this crowd just chomping at the bit to get to settle that land. It's disgusting. So disgusting. Like, there are a couple news stories I wouldn't mind covering, but like I said, I'm a bit tired and just exhausted, so I might not be doing a live stream until next Monday. We'll see. I might break down and do one anyway. Oh, but I hope to get that special thing ready for everyone for the Halloween live stream. And just, yeah, I think after Susan's speech, I'll probably call it a night after that, so we'll see. Crotchety Global News might be okay. Their YouTube comment section is a cesspool of toxic right-wingers. Yeah, probably because they are a little bit more honest in their reporting. It's the same. If you go to my videos, the ones with the most dislikes are usually about like Pierre Poilievre and Doug Ford, and the comments in it are pretty... I wouldn't say that it's a cesspool of toxic, but they're not great. But I don't seem to get harassed and attacked the same way as a lot of people, which I'm grateful for. John Martinez, one Israeli terrorist, wore a short shirt that said, deployed, destroyed, enjoyed. The massacre of Palestinians in 2014, total Nazis. I can't imagine what it's like to live in Israel if you're someone that is opposed to the Israeli government and speaking up against the genocide, to just be surrounded by so many people that are just complete and utter Nazis. Because from everything that I've seen, but it's hard to get accurate reads. It is a majority of the country is supporting what's happening in Gaza, which is just... I have a hard time comprehending that. Like, really, just the amount of people gleeful at this genocide that is happening, just... And I also look at that, like the settlers who are just so eager to go into Gaza, and it's like, they're going to hit a find out stage if they decide to settle northern Gaza. Yeah. It's just, that's part of what's so draining, is just seeing the horrid news every day that's coming out of there. Every day is more massacres, more death and destruction, and it takes a toll. Because it's such a helpless feeling being over here and not being able to do anything, not being able to sway any decisions or do anything like on an individual level. There's nothing I can do other than speak up and report on it the best that I can. But to just this feeling of not being able to like actively go and stop it is so frustrating. And then seeing the people who have the ability to actually influence it and stop it do nothing. Justin Trudeau and the governments and the American government, they have the power to apply pressure, and they're not. And that is unconscionable. And I don't want to wait for history to say, oh yeah, they were horrible for what they did. I want something to change now. You know, I don't want to wait for history to look back and say, shoulda, woulda, coulda. I want that change to happen now, because it should have never happened in the first place. Still waiting for Holtz to arrive. But thank you everyone for coming out. I know, like, New Brunswick election isn't exactly, clickbait, but hopefully it was made interesting, and at least it ended in a good story, good news that, the conservative government there was soundly defeated. No nail biter, no waiting for recounts or anything, but just very concrete defeat, which is so nice to see. And I hope the same thing happens in Saskatchewan. We'll have to wait another week to find out, but I am looking forward to seeing Steve Boots' video on it, because he is from Saskatchewan, so it's near and dear and personal to him. But then Mark was also saying that there's a good chance that there'll be an election in Nova Scotia before the end of the year. Whew. But I strongly suspect that Doug Ford is waiting until after the federal election, like right after, before he's going to call election. Definitely after he's sent out the $200 checks to everyone. So I don't think there'll be an election here in Ontario until spring of next year, which is when I suspect the federal election will be called. John Martinez, I'm just glad Canada appears to be going red. Well, some of the provinces, this is good. This is good. Must be so confusing for Americans to be like, oh, look at this election coverage. Let's see what's this. What is this New Brunswick state they are talking about? And oh no, it looks like the Republicans are winning. Hello, my dogs are goth. Sandy, you are shining a light on what's going on in Palestine, and it does help even if it feels small. It's more than many of us can do. Thank you. John Martinez, so happy New Brunswick got off their asses. Yeah, I am interested to see. I don't know if I go to here, if they have the percentage. Wikipedia will update it to show how many people actually came out to the polls. Let's see. It should be up here. Oh, turnout was at 57%. More than half is actually pretty good. Considering, let's see if I can find out what Ontario's was. Let's see, in 2022. There we go. Yeah, Ontario's election was only 43.5% came out to vote. And of the possible voters, like again, he got in with only 18% of possible votes, which is just disgusting. But won't probably get voter turnout for a while. Wonder, actually, does this have voter turnout? Let's see. Close races. Blaine Higgs defeated. Wahaha. Susan Holt elected. Oh, and looks like the leader of the Green was also elected. Probably have to wait till tomorrow to find out what the turnout was, which I'll report in the when I do the Saskatchewan live stream. Like, honestly, I'd love to get Steve Boots to be on the live stream with me, but I have no way of contacting him. I have no connection to him whatsoever. I don't think he knows I exist. And if he does a live stream, he'd most likely team up with Lance again. But I am talking to some people because I would like to get somebody on stream with me to go over the election live, even if they aren't Canadian. I've asked somebody already, just waiting to find out if they can make it or not. Oh, it looks like she is arriving.
Premier designate Susan Holt and her family arriving downtown Fredericton at party headquarters. The first woman premier in New Brunswick history. Elected with a Liberal majority tonight.
Yes, indeed. You know, she worked hard for this. She wasn't even supposed to win the Liberal leadership. There was another candidate, TJ Harvey, that was favored by some of the insiders in the party, but she amassed, you know, older Liberals like Rolly McIntyre and Aldea Landry, you know, elder statespersons of the party, a lot of young people, a lot of new people, and she clawed her way on the fourth round of voting, or fourth round of counting in that leadership race to capture the leadership, I think with 51% of the vote. It was not easy. There she is hugging Aldea Landry, again, Deputy Minister in the McKenna government. Until now, the highest holder of the highest elective office by a woman in New Brunswick history, and that's going to change when Susan Holt is sworn in. You can see some of these women behind Susan Holt. We were at her headquarters the other day. She had this band of women of a certain age, let's say, who were out there knocking on doors for her all the time while she was going around the province. They really wanted to see Susan Holt win. They wanted to see a woman premier, and they're getting it. And this is quite a scene here.
But
she was counted out, and in the leadership race, and,
It's nice
and
to,
it was a dramatic day.
it'll
when
be
she
nice
won
to
it,
see
and
her speech.
now,
It's
you know,
like
we
an
weren't sure she was
injection
gonna
of
win
like
today, and
serotonin.
here
It'll
she
just
is.
Winning a Liberal
It'll be nice to see such a
majority
positive
in
speech
seats.
for a change,
First
knowing that a
Premier
horrid
Lover, she's
person was
triumphant,
defeated.
And the crowd is wild with excitement. This is a moment in history. This is one of those remember when moments. And she's greeting
John
everybody.
Martinez,
wants a hug from
Wikipedia is
Susan
an
Holt
extremely
tonight.
reliable source than any other news outlet, in my opinion.
She campaigned on change, and New Brunswick voters, they said they wanted it. She said she was campaigning with a team approach, Team Holt, and her team showed up at the polls. The CBC's Jean Armstrong is there, somewhere in the crowd. Jean, where are you?
Hi, Claire. I was right at the door when she and her 3 daughters and husband John walked in the room. Huge smiles on their face, you know.
My dogs are God, thank God. How it was so close is terrifying. I think you're talking about the BC election. Yeah, it should have never been that close.
When they walked through that
With the way the
crowd
Conservatives
that
are.
swarmed the family. So it really
Yeah, with the way the Conservatives are, there is no excuse for it to be that close. The NDP did a piss poor job of selling their platform. They made a hard turn to the center because the Liberals dropped out completely. Like, it was an absolute disgrace. Like, as far as I'm concerned, David Eby should step down. But of course, they see any win as a win and take it, you know, it goes to their heads. But it should have never been that close. And any province where it is that close is just, you know, it shows a lack of education in the public, low information voters. And it's so disheartening at times because, you know, who becomes a premier of a province, like which party is leading, has such a direct impact on people's lives when it comes to supervised consumption sites, healthcare, mental health care, you know, what people on disability get, the education, all of that. It has such a direct impact on our lives. Oh, she's speaking. Okay.
I want to thank every voter, every person who came out and exercised their right to vote and participate to keep our democracy strong. Thank you to everyone who voted. And a special thank you to everyone who voted for Team Holt and our amazing candidates that we elected tonight. Je veux aussi remercier chaque candidat.
I also want to thank every candidate who stood up and decided to run for the party. That's something incredible to do.
That put their name on a ballot and offered to serve New Brunswick. Thank you. I have to thank the people with whom this could never be possible, and that is the volunteers. Politics is a work of volunteers. It is people who show up and knock on doors and make calls, and there were thousands and thousands of them, and we could not have done this without you. So many of you are here. Merci aux bénévoles. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you to the volunteers. Thank you so much.
I would also like to thank Mr. Blaine Higgs for his service to New Brunswick over these past 6 years.
You don't have to thank him. It's okay.
And offer my congratulations to David Kuhn on his re-election. I look forward to working with him in the legislature. There's 2 special thank yous that I'd like to make, if I may, to the people of Fredericton South Silverwood, the community where I grew up, where I learned to ski, to play piano, to do a whole bunch of things. Thank you very much for choosing me to be your MLA.
So in Ontario, it's an MPP, that's Member of Provincial Parliament. In most other provinces, it's MLA, Member of Legislative Assembly. And then in Quebec, it's PLC. I'm not entirely sure what it stands for off the top of my head, though.
My family and I, we love all those people. You are an incredible community, and thank you for giving me this opportunity.
I also want to take a moment to recognize a couple particular people who came before me. Brenda Robertson. Shirley Dysart, the first leader of the Liberal Party. Elizabeth Weir, the first woman to lead in the legislature. Aldea Landry. And all the women who came before me to make tonight possible. C'est une occasion extraordinairement spéciale pour moi, pour mes 3 filles, Molly, Paige, puis Brooke, et leurs amis qui sont ici aussi. There's so many young girls that thank you, Aldea, and Shirley, and Elizabeth, and Barbara.
Yay!
I have to thank my incredible team of candidates. We had the most amazing group of candidates, and I want to take a minute to recognize them. Gilles Lepage, Restegouche-Ouest, Guy Arsenault, Restegouche-Est, Marco Leblanc, René Lagacé, Luc Robichaud, Isabelle Thériault, Éric Mallet, Keith Chesson, Véronique Arsenault, Sam Johnson, Benoît Book, Jacques Leblanc, Robert Gauvin, John Hyam, Natasha Vautour, Rob McKee, Tanya Sodi, Claire Johnson, Scott Grant, Dave Guthrow. I keep working my way through. Connie Larson, Mark Hambrook. Keep going, keep going. We're now into St. John. David Hickey, David Alston, John Dornan, Allison Townsend, Aaron Kennedy, Kate Wilcott, Brian Stevenson, Patty Borthwick, Troy Lyons, Chris Duffy, Marissa Palke, Julian Moulton, Luke Randall, Tanya
Okay, I'm done playing with those.
Whitney, Joni Legier, Cindy Miles, Stephen Horseman. Got Chris Duffy. I got Cindy. I think I got John Heron.
I want to get more to like actual speech. Thanking is nice and great and all.
Remember all 48 and just do it off the top of your head. I got Tanya. 2 Tanyas, Whitney
Let's
and Sody.
see.
We had an incredible team. My heart is broken for the people that we weren't able to elect tonight. I want to recognize those folks. I'm going to be talking to you soon. Thank you for standing up with our team and for New Brunswickers. And congratulations to my team members that won tonight. This is the hardest one, but it's the biggest one. I have to thank John Holt. This man who has been dying to be called Mr. New Brunswick. Et je vais le dire en français parce qu'il a pris 700.
Because
And considering I don't even think Blaine Higgs could speak French for a province that is pretty securely bilingual says a lot.
I couldn't do this without him. I know everyone in this room knows it, that I couldn't do this without him, that we couldn't do this without him. He is the other half of this little team Holt. And he puts his heart and soul into our family and our neighbors every day with very little thanks. He has believed in me since we were 16 years old. And I would not be here if it wasn't for him. So I love you. Thank you. Let's go.
Oh no, a woman premier and she's already getting emotional. Ah!
I also want to say 2 other particular things to these 3 amazing ladies, Molly, Paige, and Brooke.
I can't imagine the high she must be on right now.
I am obviously incredibly proud of my girls. They have been phenomenal throughout this roller coaster, and there's going to be a roller coaster ahead. So I want to take a minute to ask the public and the media, my mama bear is going to come out, please treat my children with care. Because they are sacrificing for New Brunswick, and they are very special people, and I hope that you will treat them as gently as they deserve to be treated, as every kid in New Brunswick deserves to be treated.
Yes, leave politicians' children, like kids out of anything, because it's just wrong to say anything about children.
Tonight's results make it clear. New Brunswickers are ready for a change. Les Néo-Brunswickois veulent un changement. Ils veulent quelque chose de différent de notre politique. Et c'est à nous de livrer une nouvelle politique. Parce qu'il y a des espoirs dans notre communauté.
What happened to the translator?
Avec une vision d'un travail collaboratif sur le terrain,
working together.
We don't take it lightly that you have put your trust in myself and my team, and that you have hope for a brighter future. But that hope I know is short-lived, and it is going to be on us to deliver authentically, on the ground, openly and transparently. It's going to be on us to bring the change that you're asking for every day and everything we communicate with you. But I know we can do it with teamwork. I know we can do it with a focus on the people of New Brunswick. The people of New Brunswick that are our biggest asset. C'est vous autres qu'on fait ce travail.
You are the ones that do the work.
Cette campagne a démontré qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire
This
avec une équipe qui
campaign
travaille
has shown
ensemble et qui
what
va
can happen with a team that works
région
together,
unie, chaque candidat
with
unique. We are
every
here to
candidate,
celebrate
every
49
region working
unique
together.
Candidates, 49 unique ridings that deserve to have a government that's going to treat their riding with respect and know that it's not going to be the same what we do in Moncton and the Miramichi. It's not going to be the same the politics we put in place for Saint John de Saint-Quentin parce que notre province est le plus beau province du monde, du tour du
Because
Canada.
our province is the most beautiful province in Canada.
Well, I don't know about that.
Notre province mérite un service
Our
local, un
province
gouvernement local qui
deserves
travaille sur le
local
terrain
service
pour
and
vous,
local
avant
government
tout. Puis ça, c'est
that
qu'est-ce
are
que
there
l'équipe
for
va
you.
faire. Okay, last one.
I feel committed to wait until she's done her speech, but part of me is like, I just want to check the SandBox and call it a night.
Couple commitments I want to make to you. We are going to lead with balance. We're going to watch the bottom line and deliver fiscal responsibility while we invest in the services that you
I'm sorry,
need,
I
like
just get so
healthcare
sick of hearing
and
the term fiscal
education
responsibility and how it's
affordable
been
place to
used and
go
abused
home.
and stuff. I just,
Nous allons avoir un gouvernement avec
it's an
un
immediate just
équilibre. On va balancer
visceral
le budget,
reaction
on va
whenever I hear
investir
fiscal
dans vos
responsibility.
priorités de soins de santé, du
balanced
système
budget,
d'éducation, du logement abordable pour que
education,
tout le monde
healthcare,
peut avoir une vie
and affordable
saine et
housing
abordable
so that
ici dans notre belle
everyone can
province du
have an
Nouveau-Brunswick.
affordable life here in New Brunswick.
I love this province. I have loved this province since I was very little, and I got to wear a New
Okay.
Brunswick
I
flag
actually, yeah,
on a
I think we're
jacket
done.
when I was 12
I
years
think
old.
I'm done. I think I'm done with that. Let's switch back. There we go. Main shot. There we go. Let's check the SandBox. Oh. Then I'll call it a night. So I scrolled back up on the SandBox to see some of the comments. My dogs are goth. Glad to hear your take, Sandy. I've been boggled at this. BC is like seeing California almost go conservative. Crotchety, I agree, Sandy, with your comments about David Eby. He is kind of bad at politics parts, countering the right-wing rhetoric and throwing people under the bus who have addiction issues. Mm-hmm. Let's see. I don't know why JD Vance and couches have come up. I jumped. There we go. Lots of eggplant emojis and stuff. John Martinez, shit, I'm an advocate for men to show their emotions. I actually had a couple things that I wanted to talk about with that if I were to do a live stream this week. Because, yeah, I agree. Men should be able to express their emotions more openly without fear of being mocked or anything of that sort. It's healthy. And also, it's just, yeah, it's healthy for them. It's healthy for society when they can actually just express who they are. Crouchety, Susan Holt and her family need to be protected. Women in public eye get worse threats from all nut jobs. I've heard a lot of horror stories around that and women who are politicians and what they have to put up with. John Martinez, I'd say none of it is nicer. Well, I haven't been to all of the provinces. All I can say is Banff. The Rocky Mountains, Banff. I've been there, and that is... you know, you can find people who are soulmates, but that's like a soul home, if that makes any sense. When I went there, it was just this sense of this is where my home should be. It is just so unbelievably beautiful in the mountains. And yeah, and that's all I gotta say about that. Crotchety, yeah, I agree about my distaste for the fiscal responsibility stuff because I'm suspicious it means privatization and shifting the burden onto the citizens' residents. Uh-huh. My dogs are goth. Fiscal responsibility seems to always be tied to blaming individuals with needs. Yeah, like I said plenty of times, I'm not a fan of the Liberals. I'm just ecstatic the Conservatives lost, and I'm super happy Blaine Higgs lost his seat. Because he was just a horrible person and deserved to lose. Let's see. Yeah, next show, Looney Tunes 9000 saying next show is to be announced. For sure, it will be the 28th, next Monday, for Saskatchewan's election. I'm hoping to have somebody on for that, but I might do one ahead of that. We'll see. I still plan on putting up clips from the last couple live streams because I haven't really been doing a good job of clipping them up and putting them up. So you should be seeing clips of that. And please go check out clips to make sure that they get over the 100 views. Right now, all the clips are recently that have been up, except for a couple of the shorts. The last 2 shorts that I did, if you could go and watch them to bump them up over 100 views, I'd appreciate that. Yeah. My dogs are goth. Looney, I was looking for Sandy's Amazon link. Can't find it, and thank you for linking it. It's also, I keep that in the description box below. John Martinez just says that makes sense, Sandy, and I'm not entirely sure of the context, so yeah. It must be everything that I've said. My dogs are goth. I love living in Nelson and Victoria. Another place that I loved in Alberta. Oh my gosh, I'm horrible with names. The Tyrone Museum is there. So horrible with names. It's where the dinosaurs were. The Tyrone Museum is like dinosaurs, and I love dinosaurs. And seeing, oh, what are they called? Some of the land formations there and stuff were also just beautiful. Like, the nice thing about Alberta is you can go from almost like desert type land to the mountains in just a matter of hours. Beautiful. But also there's like pictures of like Newfoundland that I've seen that are just amazing. Up north, because I'm a winter person, so anything snowy is nice for me. But even parts of like Ontario, if you go up north into the Shield and all the little lakes and the forests and stuff, it's just, there's so much natural beauty in this country, regardless of which province you're in. I suppose except for PEI. I joke. PEI also has its own charm. Oh. But even here in Ontario, you know, I can just drive out a little bit and see drumlins, which are like land formations from when the glaciers were here, which I absolutely love. And there's the Niagara Escarpment, which is beautiful. And like Algonquin Park, oh my God, Algonquin Park is amazing. I love it there so much because there you can see the Milky Way at night. Like, it is unlike anything else I've seen because it has to do with the way the balance of the forest and the water bodies in that area absorb the light of the surrounding areas. But I had never seen the Milky Way so clearly than when I had gone there. To the point when I first saw it, I was confused at seeing the glowing cloud that went from horizon to horizon until it pointed out like that strip of white that you see across the sky is the Milky Way. And I was like, wow. Saw it when I went to space camp. I was 14 in Algonquin Park. I really loved it. I love space too. Grand Theft Autobot agreed, Sandy. Libs bad, cons worse. And John Martinez here in Idaho. It's beautiful everywhere. This is where I love to be. John Martinez, I'll be sure to comment, Sandy. Yes, please do. And I do appreciate, John, you commenting under the videos, because that helps boost them in the algorithms and stuff. You don't need to read the other comments and respond to people. I do try to glance through them. I get some notifications of some comments in my little bell thing. And so I scan through them for names that I recognize. I'm not necessarily keen on reading a lot of the comments because, especially if it's about Justin Trudeau or Pierre Poilievre, they tend to be very negative, and I just don't need that psychic damage. But I do try to scan them every now and then to see, you know, I want to see comments from you guys. I like you guys. Oh, Drumheller. Yes, that's it. My dogs are goth. That is exactly where I was talking about. Beautiful. And where are they? The Hutus? The hoodoos. The hoodoos? Is that the rock formations? Absolutely beautiful there. Grand Theft Autobot. My spouse wants to go to PEI. They're a fan of Anne of Green Gables. I would love to travel like all across the country and see everything. All the provinces and territories, in different areas in all the provinces and territories, not just like one location. But I would love to do like massive road trips around the country and just see all the different people and see the different land. Like, I love nature. So I would just love to see all of it. I'd love to see, you know, the Atlantic Ocean by the Maritimes. I've seen the Atlantic Ocean when I've been in Florida, but it'd be nice to actually see it from the Maritimes. And like try out the different foods across the country. And because like that's the thing, when you have countries as big geography wise as Canada, it's like dozens and dozens of mini countries all under the scope of one country. And then there's all the indigenous communities and stuff too that, you know, are separate from Canada and have their own cultures and traditions and stuff too that are just amazing. And I'd love to visit more and see more of, you know, what the people on this land are all about. I wanted to do more traveling in general, even around the world when I was younger. I suppose even still now, I'd love to do more traveling than what I have, but, you know, I've rarely been outside of this province. Been outside the country a few times, mostly to the States. Yeah, it's only ever been to the States, or when I was a kid, there was a family trip to the Dominican Republic, which was interesting. I was a kid at the time, so you see the world differently back then. John Martinez, if Idaho was a song, it would be Another Day Has Come by the main... I'm reading ingredient, but I don't think that's the word. It's literally heaven on earth if there was a heaven. My dogs are goth. I'm an hour from Banff, so I'm fortunate. Oh, yes, you would be. Oh, Port Dover here in Ontario, like right on the coast of the coast, right on the lake. Beautiful little town. Love it there when I went to visit there a few times. Like even just, you know, there's all these little beaches and stuff. Like you don't think of, they're not sunny beaches like you would think of down south, but they're beautiful beaches all around the Great Lakes. Hermetologist, yeah, don't read them. LOL. Speaking of the comments, my dogs are goth saying, yeah, hoodoos is what they are. Very interesting rock formations in Drumheller. But yeah, there's so much to see and do across this country. But and I love traveling. Let's see. Okay, I think I'm going to call it a night. Unlike last time where I spent like 3 hours chatting to all of you guys afterwards. Well, I have been streaming for over 3 hours now, so I'm about pooped. It's been a busy social week for me. Star Trek has filmed around Drumheller, says my dogs are goth. I can believe it. And that would be awesome. Is Vulcan in Canada? I think there is. Anyway, why don't I do this? Let's see. Where's the other? Oh, there we go. There we go. You guys know the routine. But it's nice seeing you all. Thank you to the mods for keeping the sandbox clean. Thank you to everyone who's been able to help out through Patreon, through transfers to help with Frodo's vet bills, through the Amazon wish list. All of that helps keep me going, and I super appreciate it. So, I think my dogs are goth. Yes, Vulcan is close to Calgary. I thought there was a Vulcan in Canada. Anyway, before I get distracted by the chat even more, salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today.